A continuation of the second introduction, on the greater flourishing of the northern quarter of the earth compared to the southern, and the reasons, therefore, verily, through the testimony of observation and the unbroken chain of tidings, we behold that the northern quarter of this terrestrial sphere is more adorned with the signs of civilization than its southern counterpart. The first and second of the climes, submerged in the veils of obscurity, bear less of the marks of habitation than those that follow them. Where traces of settlement are found therein, they are oft interspersed with desolate voids, barren deserts, shifting sands, and the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean that lies to their east. The peoples and tribes of these two climes are not endowed with overwhelming numbers, nor are their cities and towns abundant in multitude. In contrast, the third and fourth climes, and those beyond them, present a different visage. Deserts are scarce, sands are diminished or altogether absent. Their nations and inhabitants exceed the bounds of numerosity, and their metropolises and settlements surpass all measure in count. The flourishing of civilization is thus woven between the third and the sixth climes, while the southern reaches lie in desolation, an emptiness profound. Many a sage has declared this to be the consequence of excessive heat and the scant inclination of the sun from the zenith in those regions. Let us then elucidate this matter with proof, and thereby unveil the cause of the abundance of habitation between the third and fourth climes in the northern realm, extending unto the fifth and seventh. We submit that the southern and northern poles of the celestial sphere, when aligned with the horizon, define a grand circle that bisects the heavens into two equal halves. This, the greatest of circles, stretches from east to west and is named the equinoctial line, the circle of equal day and night. It has been established in its proper discourse within the science of astronomy that the supreme sphere moves daily from east to west, compelling all lesser spheres within its embrace to follow in subservient motion, a movement perceptible to the senses. Likewise, it is known that the planets within their own spheres traverse a contrary path, from west to east, their paces varying in speed and slowness. The trajectories of these planets align with a mighty circle of the supreme sphere, dividing it into two, known as the zodiacal circle, segmented into 12 constellations. As has been expounded elsewhere, this circle intersects the equinoctial line at two opposing points, the first of Aries and the first of Libra, thereby splitting the equinoctial into two halves, one inclining northward from Aries to Virgo, and the other southward from Libra to Pisces. When the poles rest upon the horizon across all regions of the Earth, a singular line upon the Earth's surface corresponds to the equinoctial circle, extending from west to east, and it is called the equator. This line, as determined by observation, marks the beginning of the first of the 7 climes. All habitation lies in the northern domain, rising gradually above the horizons of this submerged realm until it reaches an elevation of 64 degrees, where civilization ceases at the boundary of the 7th clime. Should the elevation ascend to 90 degrees, the span between the pole and the equinoctial circle on the horizon, 6 of the zodiacal signs remain above the horizon in the north, and 6 lie beneath it in the south. Habitation between 64 and 90 degrees becomes impossible, for heat and cold therein fail to mingle in harmony due to the prolonged separation of their seasons, rendering creation and generation unattainable. When the sun stands directly overhead at the equator, at the points of Aries and Libra, it then inclines from this zenith toward the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, its utmost deviation from the equinoctial circle being 24 degrees. As the northern pole rises above the horizon, the equinoctial circle tilts from the zenith by the measure of that elevation, and the southern pole descends equivalently. This measure, known among the keepers of time as the latitude of a place, signifies the divergence of the equinoctial from the zenith. Consequently, the northern constellations ascend above the horizon in proportion to this elevation, reaching their zenith at the Tropic of Cancer, while the southern constellations descend below the horizon toward the Tropic of Capricorn, due to their divergence on either side of the equatorial horizon. The northern horizon continues to rise until the farthest northern point, the Tropic of Cancer, aligns with the zenith. This occurs at a latitude of 24 degrees, as in the Hijaz and its environs. Such is the inclination. When the Tropic of Cancer deviates from the equinoctial at the equatorial horizon, it rises with the elevation of the northern pole until it stands directly overhead. Should the pole rise beyond 24 degrees, the sun descends from the zenith, continuing in its decline until the pole reaches 64 degrees. At this point, the sun's deviation from the zenith matches this measure, as does the descent of the southern pole below the horizon. Here, generation ceases due to the extremity of cold and frost, and the prolonged duration of such conditions without the tempering of heat. When the sun is at or near the zenith, its rays fall perpendicularly, intensifying light and heat, but when below the zenith, the rays strike at obtuse or acute angles, diminishing their effect. Thus, heat is greater at or near the zenith than in regions further removed, for light is the source of warmth and ignition. At the equator, the sun stands overhead twice yearly, at the points of Aries and Libra, and even when it inclines, its deviation is not far, nor does the heat moderate significantly at its farthest tilt toward Cancer or Capricorn, unless it ascends again to the zenith. The perpendicular rays persist upon that horizon, lingering long or remaining constant, inflaming the air with intense heat. So too in regions beyond the equator up to a latitude of 24 degrees, the rays press upon the horizon with a nearness akin to their intensity at the equator. Excessive heat desiccates the air, causing aridity that hinders generation. For when heat becomes extreme, waters and moisture evaporate, corrupting the processes of creation in mineral, animal, and plant alike, since generation depends upon moisture. When the Tropic of Cancer tilts from the zenith at a latitude of 25 degrees and beyond, the sun descends from overhead, and heat moderates or deviates slightly from balance, allowing generation to occur. This increases gradually until cold becomes excessive in its severity due to diminished light and the obtuse angle of the rays, whereupon generation diminishes and perishes. Yet the corruption of generation from excessive heat is graver than that from excessive cold, for heat more swiftly desiccates than cold congeals. Hence, habitation in the first and second climes is scarce. In the third, fourth, and fifth it is moderate due to the tempering of heat by reduced light. And in the sixth and seventh it is abundant, for though cold prevails, its initial effect does not corrupt generation as heat does, since cold lacks the desiccating power until it reaches extremes, bringing dryness in its wake beyond the seventh clime. Thus the northern quarter flourishes more abundantly in habitation, and God in his infinite wisdom knows best. From this the sages deduced the desolation of the equator and regions beyond it. Though objections were raised based on observations and continuous reports of habitation there, how then can this proof be reconciled? It appears they did not intend to assert an absolute impossibility of habitation therein, but rather their reasoning led them to conclude that the corruption of generation in those regions is profound due to excessive heat. Habitation there is either impossible or, if possible, exceedingly sparse, which aligns with reality. For though the equator and beyond may harbour some habitation, as has been reported, it is indeed scant. Ibn Rushd posited that the equator is temperate, and that what lies beyond it in the south mirrors what lies beyond it in the north, suggesting that as much of it is habitable as its northern counterpart. This view is not untenable with regard to the corruption of generation. Rather, the impossibility in the southern regions beyond the equator arises from the predominance of the watery element, which covers the Earth's surface there up to the limit, where its northern counterpart remains conducive to generation. Since the temperate zone is submerged by water, the rest follows suit. For habitation spreads gradually from the realm of possibility, not impossibility. As for the claim of absolute impossibility at the equator, it is refuted by consistent reports, and God in his boundless knowledge knows best. Let us, after this discourse, sketch a map of geography as drawn by the author of the book Zakar, and then proceed to expound upon it in detail. An elaboration on this geography, know, O seeker of truth, that the sages divided this inhabited world, as previously mentioned, into 7 regions from north to south, naming each a clime. Thus, the inhabited earth is apportioned into these 7 climes, each extending from west to east along its length. The first of them stretches from west to east alongside the equator at its southern boundary, beyond which lie only deserts, sands and scarce traces of habitation, if any be deemed true. To its north lies the second clime, followed by the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, the last of which marks the northern limit of habitation. Beyond the 7th, there is naught but emptiness and desolation until the encircling ocean is reached, much like the state beyond the first clime in the south, though the desolation in the north is far less than that in the south. The durations of night and day vary across these climes due to the sun's inclination from the equinoctial circle and the elevation of the northern pole above their horizons. Consequently, the arcs of night and day differ, reaching their extremes at the end of the first clime. When the sun resides at Capricorn, the night extends to 13 hours, and at Cancer the day reaches the same. Similarly, at the northern boundary of the second clime, the longest day at the summer solstice in Cancer stretches to 13.5 hours, as does the longest night at the winter solstice in Capricorn. The shorter of night or day occupies the remainder of the 24 temporal hours, the complete cycle of the celestial sphere. So too, at the northern end of the third clime, the longest day or night reaches 14 hours. At the 4th, 14.5, at the 5th, 15, at the 6th, 15.5, and at the 7th, 16 hours where habitation ceases. The variation in the longest of their nights and days across these climes increments by half an hour for each, increasing from the southernmost to the northernmost, distributed across the expanse of this distance. As for the latitude of places within these climes, it is the measure of the distance between the zenith of a place and the equinoctial circle, which is the zenith of the equator. By this measure, the southern pole descends below the horizon of that place, and the northern pole rises above it, 3 equal distances termed the latitude of the place, as previously explained. Those who discourse on this geography have divided each of these 7 climes along their length from west to east into 10 equal parts, detailing the lands, cities, mountains, rivers, and distances between them in the paths and routes of travel. We shall now summarize this discourse, mentioning the renowned lands, rivers and seas in each part, aligning with what is recorded in the book Nuzhat al-Mushtaq, authored by al-Idrisi al-Hamudi for a king of Sicily among the Franks, known as Zakar ibn Zakar, during his sojourn in Sicily after its departure from the dominion of Malaga. This work, composed in the mid-6th century of the Hijra, compiles the writings of al-Masudi, Ibn Qudadba, al-Hawkali, al-Qadiri, Ibn Ishaq the astronomer, Ptolemy and others. We commence with the first clime and proceed to the last, seeking God's protection and grace, the exalted and sublime. The first clime. In its western reaches lie the Eternal Isles, from which Ptolemy began measuring the longitudes of lands. These are not upon the mainland of the clime, but are islands in the encircling ocean, numerous in count, the largest and most renowned being 3. It is said they are inhabited, and reports have reached us that ships of the Franks passed by them in the mid-6th century, engaging in battle, plundering, and taking captives, some of whom were sold on the shores of the far west of the Maghreb. These captives entered the service of the Sultan, and upon learning the Arabic tongue, they spoke of their islands, recounting how they till the earth with horns, for iron is absent in their lands. Their sustenance is barley, their livestock goats, their warfare waged with stones flung backward, and their worship the prostration to the rising sun, knowing no religion nor having received any prophetic call. The location of these islands cannot be sought with intent, but only stumbled upon by chance. For navigation in the sea relies upon winds and the knowledge of their directions and destinations when they blow straight from known lands. Should the wind shift and its straight course be known, the sails are adjusted accordingly. guided by principles held by navigators and captains, the masters of ships upon the sea. The lands along the shores of the Roman Sea and its opposite banks are all inscribed upon a chart resembling their true form and arrangement along the coasts, with the directions and paths of winds drawn alongside. This chart, called the Kunbas, is their guide in voyages. Such aids are absent in the encircling ocean, rendering navigation therein perilous, for once the shores vanish from sight, return is nigh impossible amidst the vapours that gather in its atmosphere and upon its surface, hindering ships in their course. These vapours, due to their distance, are untouched by the sun's reflected rays from the earth's surface, which would otherwise dissolve them. Thus, guidance to these islands is arduous, and knowledge of them remains elusive. As for the first part of this climb, it encompasses the mouth of the Nile, flowing from its source at Mount Qamar, as we have mentioned, named the Nile of Sudan. It empties into the encircling ocean near those islands. Along this Nile lie the cities of Sela, Takrur and Ghana, all presently under the dominion of the King of Mali, among the nations of Sudan. To their lands travel the merchants of the far west of the Maghreb. Near them, to the north, are the lands of Lamtuna and other tribes of the Veiled Ones, wandering through desolate wastes. South of this Nile dwell a people of Sudan called Lamlam, unbelievers who brand their faces and temples. The peoples of Ghana and Takrur raid them, taking captives whom they sell to merchants, who in turn bring them to the Maghreb, where they form the majority of slaves. Beyond them in the south there is no significant habitation, save for beings closer to mute beasts than articulate humans, dwelling in wilderness and caves, consuming raw grass and grains, and at times devouring one another. They are not counted among humankind. The fruits of the lands of Sudan are all from the oases of the Maghreb's desert, such as Tuat, Takdarin, and Warklan. It is said that in Ghana there once reigned a king and dynasty from among the Alawites known as the Banu Salih. The author of Zakar claims this Salih was the son of Abdullah ibn Hassan ibn al-Hassan, though no such Salih is known among the progeny of Abdullah ibn Hassan. This dynasty has vanished in our time, and Ghana has fallen under the rule of the Sultan of Mali. In the east of this land, in the third part of the climb, lies the land of Kuku, upon a river springing from certain mountains there, flowing westward until it sinks into the sands of the second part. The king of Kuku once stood independent, but the Sultan of Mali seized it, incorporating it into his realm. It has since fallen into ruin due to strife, which we shall recount in its proper place within the history of the Berbers when discussing the state of Mali. South of Kuku lie the lands of Katam, among the nations of Sudan, followed by Wangara on the northern bank of the Nile. East of Wangara and Katam are the lands of Zagawa and Tajira, adjoining the land of Nubia in the fourth part of this climb. Here the Nile of Egypt flows from its origin near the equator northward to the Roman Sea. Its source is at Mount Qamar, 16 degrees above the equator. Disagreement persists on the pronunciation of this name. Some render it with a fatha on the kaf and mim, attributing it to the moon of the sky for its intense whiteness and radiance. Others, as in Yaqut's al-Mushtarak and Ibn Sa'id, render it with a dhamma on the kaf and a sukun on the mim, attributing it to a people of India. From this mountain spring 10 fountains, 5 of which converge into each of 2 lakes 6 miles apart. From each lake flow 3 rivers, all uniting in a single marsh below which lies a transverse mountain, splitting the lake from the north. Its waters divide into 2. The western stream flows through the lands of Sudan westward until it empties into the encircling ocean, while the eastern stream journeys north through the lands of Abyssinia and Nubia, dividing in Upper Egypt, with 3 of its channels emptying into the Roman Sea at Alexandria, Rashid and Damietta, and 1 into a salty lake before reaching the sea in the midst of this first climb. Along this Nile lie the lands of Nubia and Abyssinia, and parts of the oases up to Aswan. The capital of Nubia is the city of Dongola, west of this Nile, followed by Alwa and Bilak, and beyond them Mount Janadil, 6 stages north of Bilak. This mountain is lofty on the side of Egypt and low on the side of Nubia, through which the Nile passes, cascading into a distant abyss with a tremendous roar, rendering navigation impossible. Loads are transferred from Sudanese boats and carried overland to Aswan, the capital of Upper Egypt, above Janadil, a distance of 12 stages. The oases west of the Nile's bank are now in ruin, though they bear traces of ancient habitation. In the centre of this climb, in its fifth part, lies Abyssinia, upon a valley originating beyond the equator, flowing to the land of Nubia, where it joins the Nile, descending to Egypt. Many claim this to be part of the Nile of Kamar, though Ptolemy, in his geography, asserts it is distinct. To the centre of this climb, in the fifth part, extends the Indian Ocean, entering from the direction of China and submerging much of this climb up to this part, leaving habitation only in the islands within it, said to number 1,000, or along its northern shores. In this first climb, only a portion of China lies in the east, alongside parts of Yemen. In the sixth part of this climb, between the two seas descending northward from the Indian Ocean, the Sea of Kulzum and the Sea of Persia, lies the Arabian Peninsula, encompassing Yemen, Alshir in its east along the Indian Ocean coast, the Hijaz, Al-Yamama and adjacent lands, which we shall detail in the second climb and beyond. On the western coast of this sea lie the land of Zala, part of Abyssinia, and the domains of the Beya north of Abyssinia, between Mount Ilaki in Upper Egypt and the Sea of Kulzum, descending from the Indian Ocean. Below Zala, to the north in this part, is the Strait of Bab al-Mandab, where the descending sea narrows due to the protrusion of Mount Mandab, extending into the midst of the Indian Ocean along Yemen's coast from south to north for 12 miles, constricting the sea to a width of about 3 miles. This is Bab al-Mandab, through which Yemeni ships pass to the shores near Suez, close to Egypt. Below Bab al-Mandab lie the islands of Swakin and Dalak, and opposite them to the west are the domains of the Beha, among the nations of Sudan, as mentioned. To their east in this part are the lowlands of Yemen, including the town of Ali ibn Yaqub on its coast. South of Zala, along the western coast of this sea, are villages of the Berbers, succeeding one another, curving from the south to the end of the sixth part. To their east lie the lands of the Zanj, followed by Sofala on its southern coast, and the land of Wakwak, extending to the 10th part of this climb at the entrance of this sea from the encircling ocean. As for the islands of the sea, they are numerous, the greatest being Serendib, circular in form, bearing a renowned mountain, said to be the highest on earth, opposite Sofala. Then there is the island of Kamar, elongated, beginning opposite the land of Sofala, and extending eastward with a significant curve until nearing the upper coasts of China. Surrounding it in this sea to the south are the islands of Wakwak, and to the east the islands of Ceylon and others, numerous in this sea, abounding in fragrances, spices, and, it is said, mines of gold and emerald. Most of their inhabitants follow the Magian faith, governed by various kings. These islands harbour wonders of habitation, as recounted by geographers. On the northern shore of this sea, in the sixth part of this climb, lies all of Yemen. Along the Sea of Kulzum are the towns of Zabid, Al-Marjam, and the Tihama of Yemen. Beyond them is Sadr, the seat of the Zaydi Imamate, distant from both the southern and eastern seas. Further on are the city of Aden, and to its north, Sana'a. Beyond them, to the east, lie the lands of Al-Akaf, Dhofar, and then Hadramaut, followed by Alshir, between the southern sea and the Sea of Persia. This segment of the sixth part is what emerges from the sea among the central parts of this climb. Beyond it, a small portion of the ninth part emerges, and more of the 10th, encompassing the upper lands of China, with notable cities like Kanku. Opposite it to the east are the islands of Ceylon, previously mentioned. Thus concludes the discourse on the first climb, and God, the exalted and sublime, is the granter of success through his grace and favour. The second climb. This climb adjoins the first to the north. Opposite its western reaches, in the encircling ocean, lie 2 of the eternal isles previously mentioned. In the first and second parts of this climb, in their upper regions, lies the land of Kanuriya, followed eastward by the upper lands of Ghana, Then the domains of Zaghawa among the Sudanese. In their lower regions stretches the desert of Nustur, extending from west to east, a wilderness of wastes traversed by merchants between the lands of the Maghreb and Sudan. Within it are the domains of the veiled ones of Sanhaja, numerous tribes including Kazula, Lamtuna, Masrata, Lamta and Warika. Eastward along the line of these wastes lie the land of Fazan, then the domains of Arkar among the tribes. In the vast tapestry of the earth, woven by the divine hand, we behold the intricate patterns of lands and seas, of mountains and rivers, of peoples and their abodes, all bearing witness to the Creator's boundless wisdom. This chronicle, drawn from the ancient law of geography, unveils the third and fourth climes, among others, as they stretch across the known world, from the westernmost reaches of the Maghreb to the farthest horizons of China and the lands of the Turks. Let us wander through these realms with a heart attuned to the marvels of creation, pondering the signs that lie scattered across the earth for those who reflect. In the third clime, a realm contiguous with the second to its north, we commence our journey in the first of its parts. Here, towering in majesty, rises the mountain of Dharan, stretching across a third of the region's upper expanse, from its western edge by the encompassing ocean to its eastern limit. This mountain, a sentinel of stone, is home to countless Berber tribes, nations beyond enumeration save by their creator, as shall be recounted in due course. Between this lofty range and the second climb, along the shores of the encompassing ocean, lies the outpost of Mamasa, a bastion of faith and fortitude. Eastward it joins the lands of Sus and Nul, and in their direction further east, the territories of Draya and Sijilmasa unfold, followed by a fragment of the desolate expanse of Nistar, a wilderness of sand we have mentioned in the second climb. The mountain of Dharan gazes down upon these lands in this part, its passes and pathways sparse in this western domain, until it aligns with the valley of Muluya, where its folds and trails multiply as it reaches its end. Here dwell the tribes of the Masamida, followed by Hantana, Tinmalk, Kadmiwa and Mashkura, the last of the Masamida in this range. Then come the tribes of Sanhaja, known as Sinhaka, and at the close of this part, some clans of Zanata. Adjoining this, within its heart, stands the mountain of Auras, the abode of the Kutama, and beyond it, other Berber nations, whose mention shall come in their appointed places. The mountain of Dharan, from its western flank, overlooks the farthest reaches of the Maghreb, known as Al-Maghrib al-Aqsa, cradled within its bosom. In its southern reaches lie the lands of Marrakesh, Agmat, and Tadla, while on the shore of the encompassing ocean stand the outposts of Safi and the city of Sal. Within the heart beyond Marrakesh are the cities of Fez, Meknes, Taza, and the fortress of Kutama. These are the domains collectively named Al-Maghrib al-Aqsa by their inhabitants. Along the coast of the encompassing ocean are the towns of Asila and Larash, and eastward in their alignment lies Al-Maghrib al-Awsat, the middle Maghreb, with its capital at Tlemcen. On its shores by the Roman Sea, a sea that flows from the encompassing ocean through the Strait of Tangier in the western part of the fourth climb and stretches eastward to the lands of Syria, are the towns of Hunain, Oran and Algiers. For this Roman sea, emerging from a narrow passage not far from its origin, expands southward and northward, encompassing parts of the third and fifth climbs. Thus, along its coast in this third climb are numerous towns, and eastward from Algiers lie the lands of Bejaia on the sea, then Constantine further east. At the end of this first part, a short distance from the sea and the south of these lands, elevated toward the southern reaches of the middle Maghreb, are the towns of Ashir, Masila, and Zab, with its capital at Biskra beneath the mountain of Auras, connected to Dharan as aforetold, marking the eastern boundary of this part. The second part of this climb mirrors the first in form. The mountain of Dharan traverses a third of its southern expanse, extending from west to east, cleaving it into two segments. The Roman Sea inundates a portion of its northern reach. The southern segment beyond Dharan is in its western entirety a wilderness of desolation, while in its east lies the town of Ghadames, and further eastward in its alignment the land of Wadden, the remainder of which falls in the second climb as previously noted. The central segment between Darran and the Roman Sea contains in its west the mountain of Auras, along with Tebessa and Al-Abs. On the sea's coast stands the town of Bone, and eastward in its alignment lie the lands of Ifriqiya. Along the coast are the cities of Tunis, Sousse and Mahdia, while to the south of these, beneath Darran, are the lands of Jared, including Tazur, Gafsa and Nefzawa. Between these and the coastal towns lies the city of Kairouan, alongside the mountains of Waslat and Spitla. Eastward from all these, on the Roman Sea, is the town of Tripoli, and opposite it in the south stands the mountain of Damar, with a segment of the Hawara tribes connected to Darran. Facing Ghadames, mentioned earlier at the end of the southern segment, and at the eastern close of this part, lies Suwaika Ibn Mashkura on the sea, with the grazing lands of the Arabs in the land of Wadden to its south. In the third part of this climb, the mountain of Darran continues its course, yet at its end it bends northward, proceeding until it merges into the Roman Sea, where it is named the Cape of Uthen. The Roman Sea, from its northern flank, engulfs a portion of this part, narrowing the space between itself and Darran. Beyond the mountain, in the south and west, lies the remainder of the land of Wadden, with the grazing lands of the Arabs therein, followed by Zawila ibn Khattab, and then dunes and barren wastes until the eastern end of this part. Between the mountain and the sea in the west stands the town of Sirt on the coast, followed by desolate expanses and wastes roamed by the Arabs, then Ajdabiyah and Barca at the mountain's bend, followed by Tlemcen on the sea. East of this bend are the grazing lands of Habe and Rawaha until the part's end. In the fourth part of this climb, in its upper western reaches, lie the deserts of Barkik, and below them the lands of Habe and Rawaha. The Roman Sea enters this part, submerging a portion of it southward until its edge presses against the upper limit, leaving between it and the part's end barren wastes roamed by the Arabs. Eastward in its alignment lies the land of Fayum, situated at the mouth of one of the two branches of the Nile, that passes through Lahun from the lands of Upper Egypt, in the fourth part of the second climb, emptying into the lake of Fayum. Further eastward is the land of Egypt, with its renowned city on the second branch, which passes through Dallas from Upper Egypt at the end of the second part. This branch splits again below Egypt into two further channels at Chateauneuf and Zifta, and the rightmost of these divides once more at Qarmat into two additional streams. All of these flow into the Roman Sea. At the western mouth of this branch stands the town of Alexandria, at the central mouth Rashid, and at the eastern mouth Damietta. Between Egypt and Cairo, and between these coastal towns, lie the lower reaches of the Egyptian lands, brimming with habitation and fertility. In the fifth part of this climb are the lands of Syria, as I shall describe, for the Sea of Kulzum ends here from the south and in its west near Suez. This sea, commencing from the Indian Ocean in the south and stretching northward, bends at its end toward the west, forming a long segment in this part, terminating at its western edge at Suez. Along this segment beyond Suez are Faran, then the mountain of Tur, then the town of Ayla, and finally Al-Hawra at its close. From there, its coast bends southward into the land of Hijaz, as mentioned in the second climb's fifth part. In the northern reaches of this part, a portion of the Roman Sea floods much of its western side, encompassing Al-Farama and Al-Arish, with its edge nearing the town of Kulzum, narrowing the space between them, leaving a passage akin to a gate leading to the land of Syria. West of this gate lies the wilderness of Ti, a barren land devoid of verdure, once the wandering ground of the children of Israel for 40 years after their exodus from Egypt, and before their entry into Syria, as narrated in the Quran, see Al-Ma'idah 5:26. In this segment of the Roman Sea, within this part, lies a portion of the island of Cyprus, the remainder of which falls in the fourth climb, as we shall mention. On the coast of this segment, Near the narrowed edge of the Sea of Kulzum stands Al-Arish, the last of the Egyptian lands, and Ascalon, with the sea's edge between them. This segment then curves downward into the fourth climb near Tripoli and Gaza, where the Roman Sea reaches its eastern limit. Along this segment lie most of Syria's coasts. In the east, Gaza, then Ascalon, and with a slight northward deviation, Caesarea, followed by Acre, Tyre and Sidon. The sea then bends northward into the fourth climb. Facing these coastal towns from this segment stands a mighty mountain, emerging from the shore of Ayla on the Sea of Kulzum and extending northward with a slight eastward incline until it passes this part. Named Mount Lukum, it stands as a barrier between the lands of Egypt and Syria. At its base, near Ayla, is the pass of Aqaba, through which pilgrims from Egypt journey to Mecca. Further north lies the resting place of the patriarch Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him, near Mount Sarat, which extends from Mount Lukum north of Aqaba eastward, bending slightly. In its east lie the town of Al-Hijra, the dwellings of Thamud, Timah and Dumat al-Jandal, the lower reaches of Hijaz. Above them are Mount Radwa and the fortresses of Khaybar to their south. Between Mount Sarat and the Sea of Kulzum lies the desert of Tabuk, and north of Mount Sarat stands the city of Jerusalem near Mount Lukum, followed by Jordan and Tiberias. Eastward are the lands of Gor extending to Adriat, and in their alignment eastward, Dumat al-Jandal, the farthest reach of Hijaz. At the northward bend of Mount Lukum, at the end of this part, stands Damascus, facing Sidon and Beirut from the coastal segment, with Mount Lukum intervening between them. Eastward from Damascus are the cities of Baalbek and Homs in the northern reaches at the end of Mount Lukum. East of Baalbek and Homs lie Palmyra and the grazing lands of the desert until the part's end. In the sixth part, in its upper reaches, are the grazing lands of the Bedouin beneath the lands of Najd and Yamamah between Mount Arj and Saman, extending to Bahrain and Hajar on the Persian Sea. In the lower reaches of this part, beneath these grazing lands, lie Al-Hira, Al-Qadisiyah, and the confluences of the Euphrates. Further east is the city of Basra. In this part, the Persian Sea ends at Ubaidin and Al-Ubula in the lower northern reaches, where the Tigris empties into it after splitting into numerous channels and mingling with others from the Euphrates, all converging at Ubaidin to flow into the Persian Sea. This segment of the sea is wide at its upper reach, narrowing at its end in the east and constricted at its northern limit. On its western shore lie the lower reaches of Bahrain, Hajar and Al-Ahsa, with Akhtab, Saman and the remainder of Yamama to their west. On its eastern shore are the coasts of Persia from its upper reaches at the part's eastern end, on an extended promontory of this sea stretching eastward. Beyond it, to the south in this part, are the mountains of Kafs from Kirman, and below Hormuz lie the lands of Persia, including Sabur, Darabjad, Nisa, Istakhr, Shah Jahan and Shiraz, its capital among others. Below Persia to the north, near the sea's edge, lies the land of Khuzestan, with Al-Ahwaz, Tustar, Seda, Sabur, Sus, Ram, Hormuz, Arjan, marking the boundary between Persia and Khuzestan and others. The mountains of the Kurds extend to the environs of Isfahan, where they dwell and roam. Beyond them, in the land of Persia, lies a region called Al-Rusum. In the seventh part, in its upper western reaches, are the remaining mountains of Kafs, followed southward and northward by the lands of Kerman and Makran, with their cities including Rudan, Shirhan, Jiroft, Yazchir and Bahraj. Below the land of Kerman to the north lies the remainder of Persia up to the borders of Isfahan, with the city of Isfahan at the edge of this part between its west and north. East of Kerman and Persia are the lands of Sijistan and Kohistan in the south, and the land of Kohistan in the north to the west, intervening between Kerman and Persia on one side and Sijistan and Kohistan on the other. In the heart of this part lie vast wildernesses, arduous and scarce in pathways due to their ruggedness. Among the cities of Sijistan are Bust and Tak, while Kohistan belongs to the lands of Khurasan, with notable towns such as Sarax and Quistan at the part's end. In the eighth part, in its west and south, are the grazing lands of the Jala, a Turkic people connected to the land of Sijistan from its west and to the land of Kail in India from its south. North of these grazing lands are the mountains of Gur and its lands, with its capital Gazba, a gateway to India. At the northern end of Gur lies Astarabad, and further north and west to the part's end is Herat, the heart of Khorasan, encompassing Asfarain, Kashan, Bushanj, Mau-Arud, Talikan and Jurjan. Khorasan ends here at the river Jeyhun. On this river, from Khorasan's western side, stands the city of Balkh, once the seat of the Turkic kingdom, and on its eastern side are the cities of Termez. The river Jeyhun originates from the land of Wajar, in the borders of Badakhshan near India, emerging from the south of this part. At its eastern end, it bends westward near the centre of the part, where it is called the river Karanab, then turns northward through Khorasan until it empties into the lake of Khwarizm in the fifth climb, as we shall mention. At its bend from south to north in the centre of the part, it is fed by 5 great rivers from the lands of Kartal and Waksh from its east, along with other rivers from the mountains of Butum in its eastern centre, swelling its waters beyond measure. Among these 5 rivers is the river Wakshab, originating from the land of Tibet between the south and east of this part, flowing westward with a northward incline until it reaches the 9th part near the north of this part. It is intersected by a great mountain extending from the central south of this part eastward, with a northward incline into the 9th part near its north, passing through Tibet to the southeastern segment of this part, separating the Turks from the land of Kartal. It has but a single pass in the central east of this part, where Al-Fadl ibn Yahya erected a barrier and built a gate akin to the wall of Gog and Magog. When the river Wakshab emerges from Tibet and encounters this mountain, it flows beneath it for a long distance until it passes through the wild lands and empties into the Jeyhun at the borders of Balkh, then descends to Termez in the north toward the land of Juzyan. East of the land of Gur, between it and the river Jeyhun, lies the land of Nasan from Khorasan. On the eastern bank of the river are the lands of Kartal, mostly mountainous, and the land of Waksh, bounded to the north by the mountains of Butum, which emerge from the western edge of Khorasan near the Jeyhun, and extend eastward until their end joins the great mountain behind Tibet, beneath which the river Wakshab flows, as we have said, meeting at the gate of Al-Fadl ibn Yahya. The river Jeyhun flows between these mountains, with other rivers emptying into it, including the river of the land of Waksh from the east, below Termez to the north, and the river of Balkh, originating from the mountains of Butum at Juzyan, and emptying into it from the west. On this river's western side lies the land of Amud from Khorasan, and on its eastern side are the lands of Sogd, Usrushana and Shuman from the Turkic lands. East of them is the land of Fargana until the part's eastern end. All the Turkic lands are encircled by the mountains of Butum to their north. In the 9th part, from its west, lies the land of Tibet to the centre of the part, with the lands of India to its south and the lands of China to its east until the part's end. In the lower reaches of this part, north of Tibet, are the lands of the Khazlajiya from the Turkic peoples until the eastern and northern end of the part. Connected to it from its west is the land of Fargana until the eastern end, and from its east the land of Tagragar of the Turks until the eastern and northern end. In the 10th part, in its entirety to the south, lies the remainder of China and its lower reaches, and in the north the remainder of the land of Tagragar. Then eastward the land of Karkir of the Turks until the eastern end. North of the land of Karkir are the lands of Kathman of the Turks, and opposite them, in the encompassing ocean, lies the island of Ruby, in the midst of a circular mountain with no access or path to it. Ascending its summit from outside is exceedingly difficult, and within the island are deadly serpents and abundant ruby stones. The people of that region devise means inspired by God to obtain them. The inhabitants of these lands in the 9th and 10th parts, beyond Khorasan and the mountains, are all grazing lands for the Turks, nations beyond counting, nomads and wanderers with camels, sheep, cattle and horses for breeding, riding and sustenance. Their tribes are numerous, known only to their creator. Among them are Muslims near the lands of the river Jayhun, who raid the disbelievers among them who adhere to Zoroastrianism, selling their captives to neighbouring lands and venturing to Khorasan, India and Iraq. The fourth climb, joined to the third from the north, begins in its first part with a segment of the encompassing ocean, elongated from its southern start to its northern end. On it, in the south, stands the city of Tangier. From this segment below Tangier extends from the encompassing ocean to the Roman Sea a narrow strait, a mere 12 miles wide, between Tarif and Al-Jazira al-Qadra to the north, and Qasr al-Majaz and Ceuta to the south. It stretches eastward until it reaches the centre of the fifth part of this climb, expanding gradually as it proceeds, engulfing the four parts and much of the fifth of this climb, as well as the third and fifth, as we shall mention. This sea is also called the Syrian Sea, and within it are numerous islands, the greatest in the west being Yabisa, then Mallorca, Minorca, Sardinia, Sicily, the largest of them, then Peloponnese, Crete and Cyprus, as we shall detail in their respective parts. From this Roman Sea, at the end of its third part and in the third part of the fifth climb, emerges the Gulf of Venice, extending northward, then bending at the centre of the part from its heart and proceeding westward until it ends in the second part of the fifth. Also from it, at the eastern end of the fourth part of the fifth climb, emerges the Gulf of Constantinople, extending northward in a narrow passage, the width of an arrow's flight, to the end of the climb, then opening into the fourth part of the sixth climb, bending into the Sea of Nicaea, proceeding eastward through the entire fifth part and half of the sixth climb, as we shall mention in its place. As the Roman Sea emerges from the encompassing ocean at the Strait of Tangier and expands into the third climb, a small segment remains south of the strait in this part, where the city of Tangier stands at the confluence of the two seas. Beyond it is Ceuta on the Roman Sea, then Khatun and Badiz. The sea then engulfs the remainder of this part eastward and extends into the third. Most of the habitation in this part lies in its north and north of the strait, all belonging to the western lands of Al-Andalus. Between the encompassing ocean and the Roman Sea, it begins with Tarif at the confluence of the seas, and eastward on the coast of the Roman Sea are Al-Jazira al-Qadra, Malaga, Al-Munqab, and Almeria. Below these, from the encompassing ocean westward and near it, are Jerez and Lebria, with the island of Cadiz opposite them. East of Jerez and Lebria are Seville, Écija, Cordoba, Madinat al-Zahra, Granada, Jaén, Ubeda, Guadix and Baza. Below these are Santa Maria and Silves on the encompassing ocean to the west, and eastward are Badajoz, Mérida, Evora, then Gafik, Beja and Calatrava. Below these is Lisbon on the encompassing ocean to the west by the river Tagus, and eastward are Santarém and Murcia on the same river, then Cantarat as Saif. Lisbon faces eastward the mountain of Sharat, which begins there in the west, and extends eastward along the northern end of the part, terminating at the city of Salamanca beyond its midpoint. Below this mountain are Talavera east of Forna, then Toledo, Guadalajara, and the city of Salamanca. At the start of this mountain, between it and Lisbon, lies the town of Calmaria. This is western Al-Andalus. As for eastern Al-Andalus, on the coast of the Roman Sea beyond Almeria, are Cartagena, Alicante, Denia, Valencia, until Tortosa at the part's eastern end. Northward below them are Lleida and Zaragoza, bordering Baza and Calatrava from western Al-Andalus, then Murcia to the east, then Zativa below Valencia to the north, then Gijona, Tortosa, and Tarragona at the part's end. Below these to the north are the lands of Manresa and Roda, bordering Zaragoza and Toledo from the west, then Huesca to the east below Tortosa and northward, then east of Salamanca, Calatayud, Zaragoza, and Lleida at the eastern and northern end of the part. The second part of this climb is entirely submerged by water, save for a segment in its western north where the remainder of Mount Bernat, meaning the Mountain of Passes, lies. Its path emerges for the traveller from the end of the first part of the fifth climb, beginning at the edge, terminating from the encompassing ocean at the southern and eastern end of that part. And so, the journey unfolds in the southern reaches, where the path veers eastward, emerging into the fourth climb, diverging from its primal segment into a second realm. There, a fragment of it lies, its folds leading to the connected mainland, known as the land of Gascony. Within its embrace are nestled the cities of Carcassonne and Girona, and upon the shores of the Roman Sea stands the city of Barcelona, followed by Narbonne. In this sea, which engulfs a portion of the land, lie numerous islands, many of them diminutive and uninhabited. To the west of this expanse is the island of Sardinia, and to the east the vast and far-reaching island of Sicily, whose circumference is said to span 700 miles. It is adorned with many cities, among them the renowned Syracuse, Palermo, Trapani, Mazara and Messina. This island gazes across the waters toward the land of Africa, and between them lie the islands of Gozo and Malta. The third segment of this climb is likewise submerged beneath the sea, save for three portions in the northwest: the land of Calabria, the central region of Apulia, and the eastern domain of the Venetians. The fourth segment, too, is largely engulfed by the sea. As I foretold, its islands numerous, most of them desolate, as in the third. Among the submerged are the island of Peloponnese in the northwestern quarter, and the elongated island of Crete, stretching from the centre of this segment toward the south and east. The fifth segment of this climb is claimed by the sea in a great triangle between south and west, its western side extending to the farthest northern reaches of the segment, while its southern side stretches to about two-thirds of its span. What remains on the eastern side, a third of the segment, curves northward and westward along the sea, as we have mentioned. In its southern half lie the lower reaches of Syria, and through its midst runs the mountain of Lebanon, extending to the northernmost bounds of Syria, where it turns toward the northeastern quadrant. After this turn, it is named the Chain Mountain, and from there it passes into the fifth climb, cutting through a portion of the Jazira lands to the east. From its bend, toward the west, rise interconnected mountains, stretching until they reach a promontory jutting from the Roman Sea, receding to the northernmost edge of the segment. Between these mountains lie passes known as the Gates, which open unto the lands of the Armenians. In this segment, between these mountains and the Chain Mountain, lies a portion of land, while in the southern region, as we have noted, are the lower reaches of Syria, with the mountain of Lebanon traversing between the Roman Sea and the southern extremity of the segment northward. Upon the coast of this sea stands the town of Tartus at the southern outset of the segment, bordering Gaza and Tripoli on the shore of the third climb. North of Tartus are Jabala, then Latakia, followed by Iskenderun and Seleucia, and further north lie the lands of the Romans. As for the mountain of Lebanon, which lies between the sea and the segment's farthest reaches, it is flanked on its western side, from the highest southern point of the segment, by the fortress of Al-Hawani, belonging to the Ismaili Hashashin, known in these times as the Fedayeen and called Masyaf. It faces Tartus, and opposite this fortress, on the eastern side of the mountain, lies the town of Salamiya, north of Homs. Within Masyaf, between the mountain and the sea, is the town of Antioch, and opposite it, east of the mountain, are Marat al-Numan and al-Maraga. North of Antioch are Adana, then Tarsus, marking the end of Syria. West of the mountain, opposite them, are Kinasrin and Ain Zarba, while east of the mountain, facing Kinasrin, lies Aleppo, and opposite Ain Zarba is Manbij, the farthest reach of Syria. As for the gates, to their right, between them and the Roman Sea, lie the lands of the Romans, which in these days belong to the Turkmens under the rule of the son of Osman. On their coast are the towns of Antioch and Alanya. The lands of the Armenians, situated between the Gates Mountain and the Chain Mountain, encompass Marash, Malatia, and Marat al-Numan, extending to the northernmost bounds of the segment. From the fifth segment, in the lands of the Armenians, flow the rivers Seyhan and Seyhan in the east. Seyhan courses southward, passing the gates, then Tarsus and Adana, before turning downward to the north and west, emptying into the Roman Sea south of Seleucia. Seyhan flows parallel to Ceyhan, skirting Ma'arat al-Numan and Marash, crossing the Gates Mountains into the land of Syria, passing Ain Zaba, then diverging from Ceyhan before turning northward and westward to merge with it near Adana, west of the town. As for the lands of Jazira, encircled by the curve of Mount Lebanon to the Chain Mountain, in their south lie the towns of Al-Rafida and Al-Raqqa, then Haran, Suruj, Edessa, Nusaybin, Samsat, and amid beneath the Chain Mountain at the northern and eastern extremities of the segment. Through the heart of this region flow the rivers Euphrates and Tigris, emerging from the fifth climb and passing through the lands of the Armenians southward until they cross the Chain Mountain. The Euphrates flows west of Samsat and Suruj, veering eastward near Al-Rafida and Al-Raqqa, before exiting to the sixth segment. The Tigris flows east of Amid, turning eastward nearby to exit close to the sixth segment. In the sixth segment of this climb, to the west lie the lands of Jazira, and to the east, connected to them, are the lands of Iraq, extending nearly to the segment's farthest bounds. There, at the edge of Iraq, rises the mountain of Isfahan, descending from the southern part of the segment and curving westward. When it reaches the centre of the segment from its northern end, it turns westward until it exits the sixth segment, joining the Chain Mountain in the fifth segment. Thus, the sixth segment is divided into two portions, western and eastern. In the western portion, to the south, is the outlet of the Euphrates from the fifth segment, and to the north, the outlet of the Tigris. The Euphrates, upon entering the sixth segment, passes Circesium, from where a channel branches northward, meandering through the lands of Jazira and sinking into its regions. It flows not far from Circesium before turning southward, passing near Al-Kabur to the west of Al-Rabba, where channels branch from it. It continues south with Sifin to its west, then turns eastward, splitting into tributaries. Some pass by Kufa, others by the palace of Ibn Hubayra and the two mosques, all emerging in the south of the segment into the third climb, sinking near Al-Hira and Al-Qadisiyah in the east. The Euphrates exits Al-Rabba eastward, along its course to Hit from the north, then to Al-Zab and Al-Anbar from their south, before merging with the Tigris at Baghdad. As for the Tigris, upon entering this segment from the fifth, it passes Jazirat ibn Umar to the north, then Mosul likewise, and Tikrit, reaching Al-Haditha, where it turns southward. Al-Haditha remains to its east, as do the greater and lesser Zab, and it flows southward along its course west of Al-Qadisiyah until it reaches Baghdad, merging with the Euphrates. It then continues south, west of Jarjariah, until it exits the segment into the third climb, where its tributaries and channels spread out, then converge to empty into the Persian Sea near Abadan. Between the Tigris and Euphrates, before their confluence at Baghdad, lie the lands of Jazira. After separating from the Euphrates at Baghdad, the Tigris is joined by another river coming from the northeastern direction, reaching the lands of Al-Nahrawan opposite Baghdad to the east, then turning south to merge with the Tigris before exiting to the third climb. Between this river and the mountain of Iraq and the Persians lies the land of Jalula, and to its east, near the mountain, are the towns of Halwan and Saimara. The western portion of this segment is traversed by a mountain beginning from the Persian mountains eastward to the segment's end, called Mount Sharazur, dividing it into two smaller portions. In the south of this smaller portion lies the land of Kunjan, west and north of Isfahan, known as the land of Al-Halus. In its centre is Nahavand, and to its north are Shahrazur to the west at the confluence of the mountains, and Dinawar to the east at the segment's end. In the second smaller portion is a part of Armenia, its capital Maraga, and opposite it from the mountain of Iraq is a region called Baria, home to the Kurds, with the greater and lesser Zab of the Tigris beyond it. At the eastern end of this portion lie the lands of Azerbaijan, including Tabriz and Beydagan. In the northeastern corner of this segment is a portion of the Sea of Nitis, which is the Caspian Sea. In the seventh segment of this climb, to the west and south, lies most of the land of Al-Halus, including Hamadan and Qazvin, with the remainder in the third climb, where Isfahan is located. It is encircled to the south by a mountain emerging from its west, passing through the third climb, then turning from the sixth segment to the fourth climb, connecting to the mountain of Iraq in the east, as previously mentioned. This mountain surrounds the land of Al-Halus in the eastern portion, descending from the third climb northward to this seventh segment, encircling Al-Halus from the east. Beneath it lie Kashan and Qom, and it turns slightly westward near halfway along its path, then circles back eastward and northward until it exits to the fifth climb, encompassing in its curve and turn the land of Ray to the east. From its bend begins another mountain, stretching westward to the end of this segment, with Qazvin to its south, and on its northern side, connected to the mountain of Rai, extending eastward and northward to the centre of the segment. Then to the fifth climb lies the land of Tabaristan between these mountains and a portion of the Sea of Tabaristan. Entering this segment from the fifth climb, near the middle from west to east, and intersecting at the mountain of Rai and its westward turn, is a connected mountain running eastward with a slight southern incline until it enters the eighth segment from the west. Between the mountain of Rai and this mountain, at their origin, lies the land of Jurjan, including Bistam. Beyond this mountain is a portion of this segment containing the remainder of the desert between Persia and Khorasan, east of Kashan. At its end, near this mountain, is the town of Astarabad, and along its eastern slopes to the segment's end lie the lands of Nishapur in Khorasan. South of the mountain and east of the desert are Nishapur, then Marv al-Shahijan at the segment's end, and to the north and east of Jurjan are Mahrajan, Kazirun, and Tus at the eastern end of the segment. All of this lies beneath the mountain, and to the north of them is the land of Nassau, encircled at the northern and eastern corners of the segments by desolate deserts. In the eighth segment of this climb, to the west, flows the river Oxus from south to north. On its western bank are Ramam and Amul from the lands of Khorasan, and Al-Zahiriya and Al-Jurjaniya from the lands of Khwarazm. The southwestern corner of this segment is encircled by the mountain of Astarabad, which traverses the seventh segment before it, emerging in this segment from the west and surrounding this corner. Within it lie the remnants of the lands of Herat and Yauzyan until they connect with the mountain of Butum, as previously mentioned. East of the river Oxus in this segment, to the south, are the lands of Bukhara, then Sogd, with its capital Samarkand, followed by Sadara, Ushna, and among them Kujanda, at the eastern end of the segment. North of Samarkand, Sadara and Ushna is the land of Ilak, and further north of Ilak is the land of Shash, to the eastern end of the segment, taking a portion of the ninth segment. In the south of that portion lies the remainder of the land of Fergana. From that portion in the ninth segment emerges the river Shash, traversing the eighth segment until it empties into the Oxus at its northern outlet from this eighth segment into the fifth climb, merging with it in the land of Ilak. A river from the ninth segment of the third climb from the borders of Tibet joins it, and before its exit from the ninth segment, the river of Fergana merges with it. Along the course of the river Shash rises the mountain of Jibragun, beginning from the fifth climb, turning eastward and inclining southward until it exits to the ninth segment, encircling the land of Shash, then turning in the ninth segment to surround Shash and Fergana to the south, entering the third climb. Between the river Shash and the edge of this mountain, in the centre of this segment, lies the land of Farab, and between it and the lands of Bukhara and Khwarazm are desolate deserts. In the northern and eastern corner of this segment is the land of Kujanda, including the towns of Izbijab and Taraz. In the ninth segment of this climb, to the west, after the lands of Fergana and Shash, are the land of Kazlajiya to the south and the land of Khalijia to the north. To the east of the entire segment is the land of Kimakia, extending into the 10th segment up to the mountain of Kokia at the eastern end of the segment, bordering a portion of the encircling sea. This is the mountain of Gog and Magog, and all these nations are among the tribes of the Turks. Thus ends the 5th climb. The first segment of it is mostly submerged by water, save for a small portion to the south and east, for the encircling sea from the western side has entered the 5th, 6th and 7th climbs beyond the encompassing circle of the climb. As for the exposed portion to the south, it is a triangular piece connected thence to Andalusia, with the rest upon it encircled by the sea on 2 sides, as if they were 2 sides enclosing the triangle's angle. Within it, from the western remnant of Andalusia, is Seville on the sea at the southern and western outset of the segment, and Salamanca to its east, with Zamora in its heart. East of Salamanca is Avila at the southern end, and the land of Castile to its east, within which lies the city of Segovia. To its north are the lands of Leon and Burgos, and beyond them to the north is the land of Galicia, up to the corner of the portion. There, on the encircling sea at the end of the western side, is the town of Santiago, meaning Jacob. From the eastern lands of Andalusia is the city of Jativa, at the southern end of the segment, east of Castile, and to its north and east are Huesca and Pamplona along the same line eastward and northward. West of Pamplona is Castile, then Najera between it and Burgos. A great mountain traverses the centre of this portion, parallel to the sea and the northeastern side, near and connected to it, and to the sea's edge near Pamplona in the eastern direction previously mentioned, linking in the south to the Roman Sea in the 4th climb, forming a barrier to the lands of Andalusia from the east. Its passes have gates leading to the lands of Gascony among the nations of the Franks. From the 4th climb are Barcelona and Narbonne on the coast of the Roman Sea, and Girona and Carcassonne behind them to the north, and from the 5th climb is Toulouse, north of Girona. As for the exposed portion in this segment to the east, it is a right-angled triangular piece, its acute angle behind the Pyrenees to the east. Upon the encircling sea, at the head of the portion connected to the Pyrenees mountain, is the town of Nyon. At the end of this portion in the northeastern quarter of the segment is the land of Poitou among the Franks, up to the segment's end. In the 2nd segment to the western side is the land of Gascony, and to its north are the lands of Poitou and Burgos, as mentioned. East of the lands of Gascony to the north is a piece of land from the Roman Sea that has entered this segment like a molar, inclining slightly eastward, making the land of Gascony to its west, entering a bay from the sea. At the head of this portion to the north are the lands of Genoa, and along the same line to the north is the mountain of Nit Jun, and to its north along the same line is the land of Burgundy. East of the edge of Genoa, emerging from the Roman Sea, is another edge, with a bay between them entering from the land into the sea, with Nice to its west and the great city of Rome to its east. Rome, the grand seat of the Frankish kings and the abode of the Pope, their supreme patriarch, is renowned for its colossal edifices, awe-inspiring temples and countless churches, whose fame has spread far and wide. Among its wonders is the river flowing through its heart from east to west, its bed paved with copper tiles, and within it is the church of Peter and Paul the Apostles, where they are buried. North of the lands of Rome is the land of Florence up to the segment's end. On this edge of the sea, to the south of Rome, is the land of Naples on its eastern side, connected to the land of Calabria among the Franks. To its north is a portion of the Venetian Gulf, entering this segment from the 3rd segment westward, bordering the north of this segment, extending to about a third of it. Upon it are many of the Venetian lands entering this segment from the south, between it and the encircling sea, and to the north are the lands of England in the 6th climb. In the 3rd segment of this climb, to the west, is the land of Calabria, between the Venetian Gulf and the Roman Sea. Encircled from the east by a connection from its land in the 4th climb into the Roman Sea, in a bay between 2 edges, emerging from the sea along the northern line to this segment. East of Calabria is the land of Apulia, in a bay between the Venetian Gulf and the Roman Sea, with a portion of this segment entering the bay in the fourth clime and the Roman Sea, encircled from the east by the Venetian Gulf from the Roman Sea, heading northward, then turning westward parallel to the northern end of the segment. Emerging along its line from the fourth clime is a great mountain running parallel to it, heading north, then westward with it into the sixth clime until it ends opposite a gulf to its north in the lands of England among the Germanic nations, as we shall mention. Between this gulf and this mountain, as they head north, are the lands of Venice, and when they turn west, between them are the lands of Croatia, then the lands of the Germans at the gulf's edge. In the fourth segment of this clime, a portion of the Roman Sea emerges into it from the fourth clime, serrated entirely by sea fragments, with a land edge emerging between each pair of serrations into the north in the bay between them. At the eastern end of the segment are sea fragments, and from them emerges northward the Gulf of Constantinople, originating from this southern edge and heading northward until it enters the sixth clime, turning eastward near there into the Sea of Cnidus in the fifth and partly the fourth segment before it, and the sixth after it, as we shall mention. The city of Constantinople lies east of this gulf at the northern end of the segment, a magnificent city that was once the seat of the Caesars, renowned for its architectural marvels and grandeur, the tales of which are many. The portion between the Roman Sea and the Gulf of Constantinople in this segment contains the lands of Macedonia, once belonging to the Greeks, from where their kingdom began. East of this gulf to the segment's end is a portion of the land of Bithynia, which I believe is now a domain of the Turkmens under the rule of the son of Osman, with its capital Bursa, formerly belonging to the Romans, until it fell to these nations and became theirs. In the fifth segment of this clime, to the west and south, is the land of Bithynia, and to the north of it, up to the segment's end, are the lands of Amorium. East of Amorium is the river Kabakib, which feeds the Euphrates, emerging from a mountain there and heading south until it merges with the Euphrates before reaching its course in the fourth clime. There to the west at the segment's end is the source of the river Seyhan, then the river Seyhan to its west along the same line as previously mentioned. Near it is the source of the river Tigris, heading along its course and running parallel to it until merging with it at Baghdad. In the corner between the south and east of this segment, beyond the mountain from which the Tigris originates, is the land of Mayafarikin. The river Kabakib, as mentioned, divides this segment into two portions, one western and southern, containing the land of Bithynia, as stated, with its lower reaches to the northern end of the segment, and beyond the mountain from which Kabakib originates is the land of Amorium, as stated. The second portion is eastern and northern, with the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates in its southern third, and to the north are the lands of Bilkan, connected to Amorium beyond the mountain of Kabakib, wide in expanse. At its end, near the source of the Euphrates, is the town of Harshana, and in the northeastern corner is a portion of the Sea of Cnidus, fed by the Gulf of Constantinople. In the sixth segment of this clime, to the south and west, are the lands of Armenia, extending beyond the segment's centre to the eastern side. Within it are the towns of Ardan to the south and west, and to the north are Tiflis and Divin. East of Ardan is the city of Kilat, then Bardar to its south, with a slight eastern incline, the city of Armenia. From there is the outlet of the lands of Armenia to the fourth clime, where the town of Maraga lies east of the mountain of the Kurds, called Armi, as previously mentioned in the sixth segment. It borders the lands of Armenia in this segment, and in the fourth clime before it from the east, where lie the lands of Azerbaijan, with their farthest reach in this segment to the east, being the land of Ardabil, on a portion of the Sea of Tabaristan, entering the eastern side of the seventh segment, called the Sea of Tabaristan. To its north in this segment is a portion of the lands of the Khazars, who are Turkmens. Beginning from the end of this maritime portion to the north are mountains connected to one another along the western line to the fifth segment, passing through it with a curve and encircling the land of Mayafarikin, exiting to the fourth climb near Amid, connecting to the chain mountain in the lower reaches of Syria, and from there to Mount Lebanon as mentioned. Between these northern mountains in this segment are passes like gates opening from both sides. To their south are the lands of the gates, connected eastward to the Sea of Tabaristan, upon which from these lands is the city of Bab al-Abwab. These lands connect westward from their southern side to the land of Armenia, and between them to the east and the southern lands of Azerbaijan are the lands of Al-Zab, connected to the Sea of Tabaristan. North of these mountains is a portion of this segment, to the west of which is the kingdom of Sarir in the northwestern corner, and in the corner of the entire segment is also a portion of the Sea of Naitis, fed by the Gulf of Constantinople, as mentioned. Surrounding this portion of Naitis are the lands of Sarir, upon which from it is the town of Atrabazida. The lands of Sarir connect between the mountain of the gates and the northern side of the segment, until they end eastward at a mountain barrier between them and the land of the Khazars, with the city of Sul at their end. Beyond this barrier mountain is a portion of the land of the Khazars, ending at the northeastern corner of this segment from the Sea of Tabaristan and the northern end of the segment. The seventh segment of this climb is entirely submerged to the west by the Sea of Tabaristan, emerging from its south in the fourth climb, the portion we mentioned there, upon which are the lands of Tabaristan and the mountains of Daylam up to Qazvin. West of that portion, connected to it, is the portion in the sixth segment of the fourth climb, connected to it from the north by the portion in the sixth segment from its east as well. A portion is exposed from this segment at its northwestern corner, into which the river Atil empties into this sea. What remains of this segment to the east is a portion exposed from the sea, a domain for the Guz among the Turkic nations, encircled by a mountain from the south entering the eighth segment, heading west to below its centre, then turning north until it meets the Sea of Tabaristan, surrounding it as it continues to its remainder in the sixth climb. Geographical discourse on the realms and regions of the earth. In the tapestry of creation, where the divine hand has woven the vast expanse of the earth, we turn our gaze to the delineation of its realms as described in the ancient annals of wisdom. Herein we trace the contours of mountains, the meanderings of rivers, and the abodes of nations as they unfold across the seven climbs, each bearing its unique imprint of nature and humanity. From the fifth climb and beyond, thus, the narrative begins with a mountain known as Sia, which curves along its edge, parting from its course, and is named there as the Mountain of Sia. It journeys westward unto the sixth portion of the sixth climb, then returns southward to the sixth portion of the fifth climb. This edge of it stands as a barrier in this region between the land of the Sarir and the land of the Khazars, joining with the latter in the sixth and seventh portions. The flanks of this mountain, called Sia, as shall be mentioned anon, embrace these lands. The eighth portion of this fifth climb is wholly the dominion of the Guds, a people among the Turks. In its southwestern quarter lies the lake of Khwarazm, into which the mighty river Jehun pours its waters, its circumference spanning 300 miles. Numerous streams from the lands of these dominions flow into it. In the northeastern quarter of this portion there lies the lake of Arun, encircling 400 miles, its waters sweet to the taste. To the north of this portion stands the mountain of Margar, meaning the mountain of snow, for its icy mantle never melts, extending to the farthest edge of this portion. South of Lake Arun rises a mountain of unyielding stone, barren of growth, named Arun, after which the lake is called. From this mountain and from Margar to the north of the lake, countless rivers descend, pouring into it from both sides. In the ninth portion of this climb dwell the people of Arax, a tribe of the Turks, situated west of the Guz and east of the Kimak. To its east, at the edge of the portion, looms the mountain of Kukia, encircling the lands of Gog and Magog, stretching from south to north until it curves at its entry into the 10th portion. It had entered this climb from the end of the 10th portion of the 4th climb prior, embracing the encircling sea until the farthest north of this portion, then bending westward in the 10th portion of the 4th climb to less than its midpoint. From its origin to this point, it encompasses the lands of the Kimak, then emerges into the 10th portion of the 5th climb, proceeding westward to its end. In its southern reaches there remains an elongated tract extending westward before the last of the Kimak lands. It then exits into the 9th portion at its eastern height, curving near to the north, and continuing in its path to the 9th portion of the 6th climb, wherein lies the barrier, as we shall recount. A segment of it, enclosed by the mountain of Kukia at the northeastern corner of this portion, extends southward and belongs to the lands of Gog and Magog. In the 10th portion of this climb, the land of Gog stretches across its entirety, save for a segment where the sea has submerged a part from its southern to northern east, except for the portion separated to the south and west by the mountain of Kukia as it passes through, and beyond that it is the land of Gog and Magog, and God, the exalted and sublime, knows best, the 6th climb. As for the first portion of the 6th climb, the sea has engulfed more than half of it, curving eastward along the northern flank, then descending southward along the eastern side until it nears the southern edge. Thus, a fragment of land is revealed in this portion, nestled between the two extremities. In the southeastern corner of the encircling sea, it forms a bay expanding in length and breadth, and this is wholly the land of Britain. At its entrance between the two extremities and in the southeastern corner of this portion lies the land of Saxons, contiguous with the land of Pentos, mentioned earlier in the 1st and 2nd portions of the 5th climb. In the 2nd portion of this climb, the encircling sea intrudes from its west and north. From the west, an elongated segment, greater than half its northern part, lies east of the British land in the 1st portion and joins with it. Another segment in the north extends from west to east, widening somewhat in the western half. Therein lies a part of the island of England, a vast isle encompassing cities and ruled by a mighty king, the remainder of which lies in the 7th climb. South of this segment and its island, in the western half of this portion, are the lands of Armenia and Affladish connected to them, then the lands of France to the south and west of this portion, and Burgundy to the east of it, all belonging to the nations of the Franks. The lands of the Al-Amrani lie in the eastern half of the portion. To its south are the lands of Ancalia, then Burgundy to the north, followed by the lands of Luita and Teutonia. Upon a segment of the encircling sea in the northeastern corner lies the land of Ephyra, all belonging to the Al-Amrani nations. In the 3rd portion of this climb to the west are the lands of Marasia in the south and Teutonia in the north. To the east, the lands of Ancaria in the south and Polonia in the north, with the mountain of Blawat interposing between them, entering from the 4th portion and proceeding westward with a northern inclination until it halts in the lands of Teutonia at the end of the western half. In the 4th portion to the south lies the land of Gethulia, and above it to the north are the lands of Russia, separated by the mountain of Blawat from the beginning of the portion westward until it stops in the eastern half. East of the land of Gethulia are the lands of Germania, and in the southeastern corner lies the land of Constantinople, with its city at the end of the gulf emerging from the Roman Sea, at its confluence with the Sea of Nitsch. A segment of the Sea of Nitsch lies in the upper eastern part of this portion, connected by the gulf, and between them, in the corner, is the land of Messina. In the 5th portion of the 6th climb, to the south near the Sea of Nitsch, it connects from the gulf at the end of the 4th portion and emerges eastward, traversing this entire portion and part of the 6th, stretching over a length of 1,300 miles from its source, with a width of 600 miles. Beyond this sea, in the southern part of this portion from west to east, lies an elongated landmass. To its west is Heraclea on the coast of the Sea of Nitsch, connected to the land of Bilkan in the 5th climb, and to its east are the lands of Lania, with its capital Sutli on the Sea of Nitsch. North of the Sea of Nitsch, in this portion, To the west lies the land of Tarkan, and to the east are the lands of Russia, all along the shores of this sea. The lands of Russia encircle the land of Tarkan from its east in this portion, from its north in the fifth portion of the seventh climb, and from its west in the fourth portion of this climb. In the sixth portion, to its west, remains a part of the Sea of Nitch, curving slightly northward, leaving between it and the northern edge of the portion the lands of Kumania. To its south, expanding northward as it curves, are the remaining lands of Lania, whose southern extremity was in the fifth portion. In the eastern part of this portion are connected the lands of the Khazars, and to their east the land of Bartas, with the land of Bulgar in the northeastern corner and the land of Baljar in the southeastern corner. A segment of the mountain of Siaku, curving with the Sea of the Khazars in the seventh portion beyond, passes through here, proceeding westward after parting, entering the sixth portion of the fifth climb, connecting there with the mountain of the Gates, and upon it lies a region of the Khazars' lands. In the seventh portion of this climb, to the south, lies what the mountain of Sia traverses, after parting from the Sea of Tabaristan, a segment of the Khazars' land to the western edge of the portion. To its east is a segment of the Sea of Tabaristan, through which this mountain passes from its east and north. Beyond the mountain of Sia, in the northwestern part, lies the land of Bartas, and in the eastern part of the portion are the lands of Shab and Buknak, nations of the Turks. In the eighth portion to the south lies entirely the land of Julk, a people of the Turks. To the north, westward, is the Stinking Land, and eastward is the land said to have been devastated by Gog and Magog before the building of the barrier. In this Stinking Land originates the river Athel, one of the mightiest rivers of the world, its course winding through the lands of the Turks, and its mouth emptying into the Sea of Tabaristan in the fifth climb, in its seventh portion. Its path is full of meanderings, emerging from a mountain in the Stinking Land from three springs that converge into a single river, flowing westward to the end of the seventh portion of this climb, then curving northward to the seventh portion of the seventh climb, passing through its edge between south and west, emerging in the sixth portion of the seventh climb, proceeding westward a short distance, then curving southward again, returning to the sixth portion of the sixth climb. From it, a tributary branches westward, emptying into the Sea of Nitch in that portion, while it passes through a segment between north and east in the lands of Bulgar, emerging in the seventh portion of the sixth climb, then curving southward a third time, piercing through the mountain of Siar, traversing the lands of the Khazars, and emerging into the fifth climb in its seventh portion, where it pours into the Sea of Tabaristan in the segment revealed at the southwestern corner. In the ninth portion of this climb to the west are the lands of Kanshak, a people of the Turks known as Kipchak, and the lands of the Sarks, also of them. To the east are the lands of Gog, separated by the encircling mountain of Kukiya, as previously mentioned. It begins from the encircling sea in the east of the fourth climb, proceeding with it to the farthest north of the climb, then parting westward with a northern inclination until it enters the ninth portion of the fifth climb, returning to its original course until it enters this ninth portion of the climb from south to north with a westward inclination. In its midst here stands the barrier built by Alexander. Then it proceeds in its course to the seventh climb, passing through its ninth portion southward until it meets the encircling sea in its north, curving with it westward to the seventh climb to its fifth portion, connecting there with a segment of the encircling sea in its west. In the midst of this ninth portion stands the barrier built by Alexander, as we have stated, and the true account of it is in the Quran. Abdullah ibn Qudadbah mentions in his book on geography that Al-Wathiq saw in a dream that the barrier had opened, awakening in terror, and sent Salam the interpreter, who stood before it and returned with its description in a lengthy narrative beyond the scope of this book. In the 10th portion of this climb, the lands of Magog extend to its farthest reaches, save for a segment where the encircling sea has enclosed it from its east and north, elongated in the north and somewhat broad in the east. The 7th climb. The encircling sea has submerged most of the seventh climb from the north to the middle of the fifth portion, where it joins with the mountain of Kukia encircling Gog and Magog. The first and second portions are engulfed by water, save for what is revealed of the island of England, the greater part of which lies in the second portion, with a segment in the first curving with a northern inclination. The remainder, with a segment of the sea encircling it, lies in the second portion of the sixth climb, as mentioned there. The passage from it to the mainland in this segment is a width of 12 miles. Beyond this island, in the north of the second portion, lies the island of Raslanda, elongated from west to east. The third portion of this climb is mostly submerged by the sea, save for an elongated segment in its south, widening in its east, wherein lies the connected land of Flonia, mentioned in the third portion of the sixth climb as being in its north. In the segment of the sea that engulfs this portion to its west lies a vast circular expanse connected to the mainland through a southern gateway leading to the lands of Flonia. To its north is the island of Barakiba, or in some copies Bukhar, elongated with the north from west to east. The fourth portion of this climb has its entire north submerged by the encircling sea from west to east, while its south is revealed. To its west lies the land of Kimazak, a people of the Turks, and to its east are the lands of Tast, then the land of Raslan to the farthest east of the portion, a land of perpetual snows with sparse habitation, connected to the lands of Russia in the sixth climb, in its fourth and fifth portions. In the fifth portion of this climb, to the west, are the lands of Russia, extending northward to a segment of the encircling sea connected to the mountain of Kukia, as previously mentioned. To the east are the connected lands of Cumania, situated on a segment of the Sea of Nietzsche in the sixth portion of the sixth climb, extending to Lake Tami in this portion, a sweet water lake fed by numerous rivers from the mountains to the south and north. In the northeastern part of this portion are the lands of the Tataria, a people of the Turks, or in some copies the Turkmen, to its farthest reaches. In the sixth portion, to the southwest and west, are the connected lands of Cumania, and in the midst of the portion lies Lake Uther, a sweet-water lake fed by rivers from the eastern mountains, perpetually frozen due to extreme cold, save for a brief period in summer. East of the lands of Cumania are the lands of Russia, whose origin lies in the sixth climb, in the northeastern part of its fifth portion. In the southeastern corner of this portion lies the remainder of the land of Baljar, whose origin was in the sixth climb, in the northeastern part of its sixth portion. In the midst of this segment of Baljar's land, the river Arthel curves southward, as previously mentioned. At the northern edge of this sixth portion, the mountain of Kukia extends connectedly from west to east. In the seventh portion of this climb, to the west, lies the remainder of the land of Yiknak, a people of the Turks, whose origin was in the northeastern part of the sixth portion prior. In the southwestern part of this portion, it emerges into the sixth climb above it. To the east lies the remainder of the land of Shab, then the remainder of the Stinking Land to the farthest east of the portion. At the northern edge of the portion, the encircling mountain of Kukia extends connectedly from west to east. In the eighth portion of this climb to the southwest and south lies the connected Stinking Land, and to its east is the excavated land, one of the wonders, a vast chasm in the earth, deep and wide, inaccessible to its bottom. Its habitation is inferred from smoke by day and fires by night that illuminate and fade, and at times a river is seen cleaving it from south to north. In the eastern part of this portion are the desolate lands adjacent to the barrier, and at its northern edge the mountain of Kukia extends connectedly from east to west. In the ninth portion of this climb to the west are the lands of Kafshak, known as Kipchak, through which the mountain of Kukia passes as it curves from its north at the encircling sea, proceeding through its midst southward with an eastern inclination, emerging in the ninth portion of the sixth climb, traversing it, and in its midst stands the barrier of Gog and Magog, as we have mentioned. In the eastern part of this portion lies the land of Gog beyond the mountain of Kukia by the sea, narrow in breadth and elongated, enclosed by it from its east and north. The 10th portion is entirely submerged by the sea. This concludes the discourse on geography and its 7 climes, and in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternation of night and day, there are signs for those who possess understanding. The 3rd introduction, on the temperate and deviant climes, and the influence of air on the colours of humanity and their diverse conditions. We have elucidated that what is submerged of this revealed earth lies in its midst, due to the extremity of heat in its south and cold in its north. Since the 2 extremities of north and south are opposites in heat and cold, it follows that their qualities must gradate from both toward the centre, rendering it temperate. Thus the 4th clime is the most balanced in habitation, while those bordering it, the 3rd and 5th, are nearer to temperance. Those adjacent to them, the 2nd and 6th, are distant from balance, and the 1st and 7th are farthest of all. Hence the sciences, crafts, edifices, garments, sustenance, fruits, and even the animals, and all that comes to be in these 3 central climes, are distinguished by moderation. Their inhabitants among humanity are the most balanced in physique, colour, character, and religion, such that even prophethood is predominantly found among them. We have not come across tidings of a prophetic mission in the southern or northern climes, for prophets and messengers are chosen from the most perfect of their kind in creation and character. As God the Exalted has said, "You are the best community that has been raised up for mankind." Quran 3:110, so that acceptance of what the prophets bring from God may be complete. The people of these climes are the most perfect due to the temperance bestowed upon them. Thus you find them at the pinnacle of moderation in their dwellings, attire, sustenance, and crafts. They build homes adorned with stones and refined by artistry, delighting in the perfection of tools and utensils, pursuing excellence to the utmost. Among them are found natural minerals of gold, silver, iron, copper, lead, and tin. They conduct their transactions with the 2 noble currencies and distance themselves from deviation in most of their affairs. These are the people of the Maghreb, Syria, the Hijaz, Yemen, the 2 Iraqs, India, Sind, China, as well as Andalusia and those near to it among the Franks, Galicians, Romans and Greeks, and those akin to or proximate to them in these temperate climes. Among these, Iraq and Syria are the most balanced of all, for they lie at the centre of all directions. As for the climes far from temperance, such as the 1st, 2nd, 6th and 7th, their inhabitants are furthest from balance in all their conditions. Their constructions are of mud and reeds, their sustenance of millet and grass, their attire of tree leaves, stitched upon them or hides, with most going bare of clothing. The fruits and foods of their lands are strange in form, inclined toward deviation, and their transactions are not with the 2 noble metals but with copper, iron or hides valued for exchange. Their character, moreover, is close to that of mute beasts, such that it is reported of many among the Sudanese of the 1st clime that they dwell in caves and thickets, consume grass, and are savage, unaccustomed to civility, even devouring one another. The same is said of the Slavs. The cause of this lies in their distance from temperance, rendering their temperaments and characters akin to those of mute animals, far from humanity in proportion to that distance. Likewise, their state in religion, for they know not prophethood, nor adhere to a divine law, save for the rare few near the borders of temperance, such as the Abyssinians adjacent to Yemen, who embraced Christianity before and after Islam up to this era, or the people of Mali, Kaukau and Takrur near the lands of the Maghreb, who embraced Islam in this era, said to have done so in the 7th century. Similarly, those among the Slavs, Franks and Turks of the north who embraced Christianity. Beyond these, among the inhabitants of those deviant climes to the south and north, religion is unknown to them, and knowledge is absent among them. All their conditions are distant from human norms, close to those of beasts. And he creates what you know not. No objection should be raised to this discourse by citing Yemen, Hadramaut, the Akaf, the lands of the Hijaz, Yamamah, and what adjoins them in the Arabian Peninsula within the 1st and 2nd climes. For the Arabian Peninsula is entirely surrounded by seas on three sides, as we have mentioned, and the moisture of these seas has an effect on the humidity of its air, mitigating the dryness and deviation that heat would demand, thus imparting to it a measure of temperance due to the moisture of the sea. Some genealogists, lacking knowledge of the natures of beings, have imagined that the Sudanese are the descendants of Ham, son of Noah, distinguished by their black colour due to a curse from their father, the effect of which manifested in their hue and in the servitude God ordained for their progeny. They narrate in this regard a tale from the fabrications of storytellers and a supplication of Noah against his son Ham found in the Torah, though it mentions no blackness, only that his descendants be servants to the descendants of his brothers. To attribute blackness to Ham is an oversight of the nature of heat and cold and their effect on the air and on what is formed therein among living beings. This colour encompasses the inhabitants of the first and second climes due to the temperament of their air from the intensified heat in the south. For the sun stands directly overhead twice each year, the intervals between close, such that the zenith persists through most seasons, increasing light and subjecting them to intense heat, blackening their skin due to excessive warmth. Correspondingly, in the opposing northern climes, the seventh and sixth, their inhabitants are enveloped in whiteness due to the temperament of their air from extreme cold in the north, for the sun remains on their horizon within the circle of vision or near to it, never rising to the zenith or close to it, weakening the heat and intensifying the cold through most seasons, whitening their complexions to paleness, accompanied by what extreme cold demands, blue eyes, rough skin, and blonde hair. Between these lie the three climes, the fifth, fourth, and third, endowed with temperance, the balance of the middle path, with the fourth being the most perfect in balance due to its ultimate centrality, as we have stated. Thus, its people possess a balance in their creation and character, demanded by the temperament of their air, flanked by the third and fifth, though these do not reach the ultimate centrality, inclining slightly, this to the hot south and that to the cold north, yet not reaching deviation. The four climes are deviant, and their people likewise in creation and character, the first and second due to heat and blackness, the seventh due to cold and whiteness. The inhabitants of the south in the first and second climes are named Abyssinia, Zanj, and Sudan, synonymous terms for the nations altered by blackness, though Abyssinia specifically refers to those facing Mecca and Yemen, and Zanj to those facing the Indian Ocean. These names are not due to descent from a black Adamite, whether Ham or another. We find among the Sudanese of the south some who dwell in the temperate zone or the seventh clime, deviant toward whiteness, whose descendants gradually whiten over time, and conversely among the northerners or those of the fourth clime who dwell in the south, whose descendants darken. This is evidence that colour follows the temperament of the air. As Ibn Sina said in his medical poem, in Zanj heat altered the bodies until it cloaked their skins in blackness, while the Slavs acquired whiteness until their skins became radiant. As for the northerners, they are not named for their colour, for whiteness was the hue of the people of the language that coined the names, bearing no strangeness to warrant consideration in naming due to its familiarity and custom. We find their inhabitants among the Turks, Slavs, Tugurgur, Khazars, Lan, many of the Franks, and Gog and Magog, bearing diverse names and multiple generations with varied appellations. As for the inhabitants of the three central climes, the people of balance in their creation, character, conduct, and all natural conditions, they possess the means of livelihood, dwellings, crafts, sciences, leadership, and sovereignty. Among them arose prophethood, kingship, dynasties, laws, sciences, cities, metropolises, edifices, foresight, exquisite crafts, and all temperate conditions. Among these climes whose tidings we have received are the Arabs, Romans, Persians, children of Israel, Greeks, and the people of Sind, India, and China. When genealogists observed the differences among these nations in their marks and emblems, they attributed this to lineage, deeming all southerners the Sudanese, descendants of Ham, and doubting their colours, they strained to narrate that feeble tale. They deemed all or most northerners descendants of Japheth, and most of the temperate nations and people of the centre, claimants to sciences, crafts, faiths, laws, governance and sovereignty, descendants of Shem. Though this claim may coincide with the truth in the lineage of these, it is not a consistent measure, merely a report of the reality, not that the naming of southerners as Sudanese or Abyssinians is due to descent from a black Ham. What led them to this error is their belief that distinction among nations occurs solely through lineage, which is not so. Distinction for a generation or nation may be through lineage in some, as with the Arabs, children of Israel and Persians, through direction and mark, as with the Zanj, Abyssinians, Slavs and Sudanese, through customs, emblems and lineage, as with the Arabs, or through other conditions, traits and distinctions of nations. To generalize that the people of a specific direction, south or north, are descendants of a known figure due to a trait, colour or mark found in that ancestor is among the errors arising from ignorance of the natures of the cosmos and directions. All these change in descendants and must not be deemed perpetual. It is the way of God with his servants, and you will not find for the way of God any alteration. God and his messenger know best the unseen, and he is the wisest, the sovereign, the beneficent, the merciful. The fourth introduction, on the effect of air on the character of humanity. We have observed among the Sudanese in general a lightness of spirit, frivolity, and an abundance of mirth, such that they are enamoured of dance to every rhythm, described as foolish in every land. The true cause of this lies in what has been established in the realm of wisdom. The nature of joy and delight is the expansion and diffusion of the animal spirit, while the nature of sorrow is its contraction and condensation. It is established that heat diffuses air and vapour, loosening and increasing its quantity. Thus, the exhilarated one finds in joy and delight what cannot be expressed due to the heat inherent in the spirit's vapour within the heart, stirred by the fervour of wine in its temperament, causing the spirit to expand and the nature of joy to emerge. Likewise, we find those indulging in baths, when they breathe its air and the heat of the atmosphere connects with their spirits, warming them, experience joy, and many burst into song arising from delight. Since the Sudanese dwell in the hot clime, and heat dominates their temperaments and the essence of their formation, their spirits possess a heat proportional to their bodies and clime. Compared to the spirits of the inhabitants of the fourth clime, theirs are warmer, thus more expansive, quicker to joy and delight, and more prone to levity, with frivolity following in its wake. Similarly, to a lesser extent, this affects the inhabitants of coastal lands, for their air is doubly heated by the reflection of light and rays from the sea's expanse, granting them a share of the effects of heat in joy and lightness, more so than in the lands of hills and cold mountains. A trace of this is found in the inhabitants of the island lands of the third clime, due to the abundance of heat in their air, for they are rooted in the south beyond the plains and hills. Consider this also in the people of Egypt, whose latitude is akin to or near that of the island lands. How joy, lightness, and heedlessness of consequences prevail among them, such that they do not store sustenance for their year or month, and most of their food comes from their markets. Conversely, since Fez in the Maghreb lies in contrast to it, deep in the cold hills, observe how its people are bowed with the weight of sorrow, how they exceed in foresight of consequences, such that a man among them stores grain for 2 years and hastens to the markets to buy his day's sustenance, fearing to diminish his reserves. Trace this in the climes and lands, and you will find in their characters an effect of the qualities of the air. And God is the Creator, the All-Knowing. And so Al-Masudi ventured to explore the reasons behind the levity of the people of Sudan, their impetuosity, and the abundance of mirth among them. He sought to provide an explanation, yet he offered nothing beyond what he transmitted from Gelen and Yaqub ibn Ishaq al-Kindi, claiming that this disposition arises from the weakness of their minds and the consequent frailty of their intellects. But such words bear no true substance, nor do they rest upon any proof. And verily God guides whomsoever he wills to a path that is straight, Quran 16:9. The fifth introduction, on the divergence of human conditions in fertility and famine, and the effects thereof on human bodies and morals. Know, O seeker of truth, that the temperate climes of this earth are not uniformly blessed with abundance, nor are all their inhabitants immersed in the ease of plenty. Within these lands, there are regions where the earth yields bountiful harvests of grain, oil, wheat and fruits, nurtured by fertile soils, balanced clay, and the dignity of settled civilization. Yet there are also barren expanses, devoid of crops or grass, where the dwellers endure a harsh and meagre existence. Such is the plight of the people of Hijaz, the southern reaches of Yemen, the veiled Sanhaja of the Moroccan desert, and those who roam the sandy fringes between the Berbers and the Sudanese. These folk are bereft of grain and oil altogether, subsisting solely on milk and meat. Likewise, the wandering Arabs of the desolate plains, though they may occasionally procure grain and oil from the hills, do so only sporadically, under the yoke of their protectors, and in scant measure insufficient to fill their needs, let alone to luxuriate in abundance. Often they content themselves with milk, which serves as a nobler substitute for wheat. Yet marvel at this paradox. Those who lack grain and oil in the wilderness are, in their bodies and characters, fairer and finer than the hill-dwellers who are steeped in plenty. Their complexions are clearer, their forms more robust and comely, their morals less prone to deviation, and their minds sharper in knowledge and perception. This is a truth borne out by experience in every generation. Consider the vast disparity between the Arabs and Berbers in these traits, and between the veiled nomads and the hill folk, a disparity evident to any who have observed their ways. And the reason for this, God knows best, lies in the abundance of food and the corrupt putrid humours it engenders, along with the dampness that breeds vile residues in the body. These residues, when distilled improperly, tarnish the complexion and distort the form through excessive flesh, as we have noted. Moreover, the vapours of these corrupt humours rise to the brain, clouding the mind and thoughts, bringing about dullness, heedlessness, and a departure from balance. Reflect upon this in the creatures of the desert and barren lands: gazelles, ostriches, oryx, giraffes, wild asses and cattle, and compare them to their kin in the fertile hills, meadows and lush pastures. How vast is the difference in the purity of their skin, the lustre of their beauty, the harmony of their forms, and the sharpness of their senses. The gazelle is akin to the goat, the giraffe to the camel, the wild ass and cattle to their domesticated counterparts, yet the disparity you behold arises solely from the abundance of the hills, which burdens their bodies with corrupt residues and spoiled humours, leaving visible traces. Conversely, hunger refines the creatures of the desert, perfecting their forms and beauty as God wills. Consider this also in humankind. Those who dwell in lands of abundant sustenance, rich in crops, livestock, oil and fruits, are often marked by dullness of mind and coarseness of body. Such is the state of the Berbers, immersed in oil and wheat, compared to their frugal kin who subsist on barley or millet like the Masamida, the people of Gumara and Sus. These latter are found to be in a better state of mind and body. Likewise, the people of the Maghreb, indulged in oil and wheat, stand in contrast to the Andalusians, whose lands lack fat in abundance and whose staple is millet. The Andalusians, therefore, possess a keenness of intellect, lightness of body, and receptivity to learning that others lack. So, too, the rural folk of the Maghreb, compared to the urban dwellers of cities and towns, reveal this truth. For though city folk indulge in abundant food and ease, they refine it through cooking and tempering with mixtures that soften its coarseness and lighten its substance. Their fare is largely lamb and poultry, and they disdain oil for its triviality. Thus the dampness in their food diminishes, and the harmful residues imparted to their bodies are reduced. Hence the bodies of city dwellers are more delicate than those of the rugged country folk, hardened by a rough life. Similarly, those accustomed to hunger among the rural folk bear neither coarse nor subtle residues in their bodies. Know, moreover, that the effect of abundance manifests even in matters of faith and worship. You will find the austere among the rural and urban folk, those who embrace hunger and shun pleasures, to be more devout and dedicated to worship than those immersed in luxury and plenty. Indeed, the pious and ascetics are scarce in cities and towns, where hardness and heedlessness prevail due to the excess of meat, oil, and refined wheat. Thus, the devout and the ascetics are found among those frugal in diet, often hailing from the countryside. Likewise, those indulged in abundance, whether rural or urban, when struck by years of famine and scarcity, perish more swiftly than others. Such is the fate of the Berbers of the Maghreb and the people of Fez and Egypt, as we hear, unlike the Arabs of the desert and wilderness, or the people of date palm lands whose staple is dates, or the people of Ifriqiya in this era, whose fare is barley and oil, or the Andalusians who live on millet and oil. When famine strikes these latter, it does not ravage them as it does the former, nor does death by hunger claim many among them, if at all. And the reason for this, God knows best, is that those accustomed to abundance and rich foods, particularly oil and fat, develop in their intestines a dampness beyond their natural temperament, exceeding its proper bounds. When their habits are disrupted by scarcity of food, lack of oil, and the consumption of coarse, unfamiliar fare, their intestines swiftly dry up and contract, leading to extreme weakness. Illness overtakes them, and death claims them suddenly, for it is a fatal affliction. Thus, those who perish in famines are killed not by the hunger that befalls them, but by the satiety to which they were accustomed before. As for those habituated to scarcity of oil and fat, their natural dampness remains within its bounds without excess, and is adaptable to all natural foods. The shift in diet does not bring dryness or deviation to their systems, and they are largely spared the destruction that afflicts others due to abundance and overindulgence in food. The root of all this lies in understanding that food, whether in harmony or abandonment, is a matter of habit. Whoever accustoms themselves to a particular diet finds it familiar, and to depart from it or alter it becomes a malady, unless the departure strays so far from the purpose of nourishment as to become poison or extreme deviation. Yet, what provides sustenance and compatibility becomes through habit a familiar nourishment. If a person accustoms themselves to milk and herbs in place of wheat, making it their custom, it becomes their sustenance, and they are independent of wheat and grains without doubt. So too those who train themselves to endure hunger and forego food, as is narrated of the practitioners of ascetic exercises, achieve remarkable feats that may seem unbelievable to the uninitiated. The reason for this is habit, for when the soul becomes accustomed to something, it becomes part of its nature and disposition, given the soul's propensity for transformation. If hunger is embraced gradually through discipline, it becomes a natural habit for the soul. What physicians imagine, that hunger is deadly, is not as they suppose, unless the soul is forced into it abruptly, with nourishment entirely cut off. In such a case, the intestines weaken, and illness ensues, threatening death. But if hunger is approached gradually, reducing food little by little as the Sufis do, it is far from deadly. This gradual approach is essential even when returning from such discipline. If one reverts to the original diet suddenly, death is feared. Rather, the return must be as gradual as the initial discipline. We have witnessed those who endure hunger for 40 consecutive days or more. At the court of Sultan Abu al-Hassan, 2 women from Algeciras and Ronda were presented, who had abstained from food entirely for years. Their case was widely known and tested, and their condition was verified until their passing. We have also seen many among our companions who subsisted solely on the milk of a goat, suckling directly from its udder at certain times of day or at breaking fast, sustaining themselves thus for 15 years. Others, too numerous to count, have done likewise, and this should not be deemed strange. Know that hunger is, in every respect, more beneficial to the body than overeating for those who can endure it or reduce their intake. Its effect on bodies and minds is one of clarity and rectitude, as we have stated. Consider the effects of foods on bodies. Those nourished by the flesh of noble, large-bodied animals produce offspring of similar stature, as is observed among rural folk compared to city dwellers. Likewise, those who consume camel milk and meat develop endurance, patience, and the ability to bear heavy burdens, traits inherent to camels. Their intestines, too, mirror the robustness and resilience of camels, unaffected by weakness or the harm that other foods might inflict. They consume purgatives like unprocessed colocynth, drias and carob without harm, whereas such substances, if taken by city dwellers with delicate intestines accustomed to refined foods, would bring death swifter than the blink of an eye due to their toxicity. Among the effects of food on bodies, as noted by farmers and confirmed by experience, is that chickens fed with grains cooked in camel dung, or whose eggs are incubated with such dung, produce offspring of exceptional size. Many similar examples abound. If we observe such effects of food on bodies, there is no doubt that hunger too leaves its mark on the body. For opposites operate on a similar principle in their influence or lack thereof. Thus, hunger's effect in purifying bodies of corrupt excesses and disruptive humours that harm body and mind is akin to food's role in generating such conditions, and God encompasses all with his knowledge. The sixth introduction, on the categories of perceivers among humankind by nature or discipline, preceded by discourse on revelation and vision. Know, O seeker of enlightenment, that God the Exalted has chosen from among humankind certain individuals whom he has favoured with his direct address, endowing them with innate knowledge of him and appointing them as intermediaries between himself and his servants. Through them, he acquaints his creation with their true welfare, urges them toward guidance, shields them from the fire, and directs them to the path of salvation. Among the knowledge he imparts to them and the miracles he manifests through their tongues, tidings of unseen events and future happenings beyond human ken, are truths accessible only through God, by their mediation. They know these only by God's instruction, as it is said, "Indeed, I know only what God has taught me." Understand that their tidings in this regard are, by their very nature and necessity, truthful, as shall become clear when the essence of prophethood is elucidated, along with the signs of this unique class of humanity. Among their signs is that during the state of revelation they experience an absence from those present with them, accompanied by a sound like a murmur, resembling a faint swoon or fainting in the eyes of onlookers, though it is neither. In truth, it is an immersion in communion with the spiritual angel through a perception fitting to them wholly beyond ordinary human faculties. This communion then descends to the level of human perception, either as a sound of speech they comprehend, or as the vision of a figure addressing them with what has come from God. When this state lifts, they retain what was conveyed to them. As it was said, when asked about revelation, "Sometimes it comes to me like the ringing of a bell, and it is the most intense upon me. When it ceases, I have grasped what was said. At other times, the angel appears to me as a man and speaks to me, and I understand what he says." The intensity and strain they endure in this state are beyond expression. As narrated in the traditions, the prophet experienced profound struggle during revelation. Aisha, may God be pleased with her, said, "Revelation would descend upon him on the coldest of days, and when it ceased, sweat would drip from his forehead. And God, the Exalted, declared, 'Indeed, we will cast upon you a weighty word.'" Quran 73:5. Due to the profound nature of this descent of revelation, the polytheists accused the prophets of madness, claiming they were possessed or followed by jinn, though this stemmed only from the outward appearance of their states. And whomsoever God leads astray, there is none to guide. Among their signs, too, is that even before revelation they are marked by goodness, purity, and avoidance of all that is blameworthy or impure. This is the essence of their infallibility, as if they are naturally inclined to shun vice and are repelled by it, as though it contradicts their very being. As recorded in the authentic traditions, when the Prophet, as a youth, carried stones with his uncle Abbas to rebuild the Kaaba and his garment slipped, exposing him, he fell unconscious until he was covered again. Similarly, when invited to a gathering of festivity and play, he was overcome by sleep until the sun rose, missing the event entirely, for God preserved him from such matters. By his innate disposition, he abstained even from distasteful foods like onions and garlic. When asked about this, he replied, "I converse with one whom you do not converse with." When he first experienced the shock of revelation and confided in Khadija, may God be pleased with her, she tested him by saying, "Place me between you and your garment." When he did so, the state left him, and she declared, "It is indeed an angel, not a devil," meaning that he did not approach women in that state. She also asked him about the attire he preferred the angel to appear in, to which he replied, "White and green." She affirmed, "It is the angel, for white and green are colours of goodness and the angels, while black is associated with evil and devils." Another of their signs is their call to faith and worship, encompassing prayer, charity and chastity. Khadija deduced his truthfulness from this, as did Abu Bakr, needing no external proof beyond his character and state. As recorded in the authentic traditions, when Heraclius received the Prophet's letter inviting him to Islam, he summoned those of Quraysh globals from among the Quraysh present in his land, including Abu Sufyan, to inquire about the Prophet's condition. Among his questions, Heraclius asked, "What does he command you to do?" Abu Sufyan replied, "He commands us to pray, to give charity, to maintain kinship ties, and to be chaste, among other matters." Hearing this, Heraclius declared, "If what you say is true, then he is a prophet, and he will rule over the land beneath these 2 feet of mine." The chastity Heraclius referred to is the infallibility of the prophet, demonstrating how such traits and the call to faith and worship serve as evidence of the veracity of prophethood, requiring no further miracle as proof. Thus, these are among the signs of prophethood. Yet another sign is that they possess noble lineage among their people. As recorded in the authentic traditions, God has not sent a prophet except from among a protected or affluent segment of his people. In another narration it is said, "from among the wealth of his people." This was affirmed by Al-Hakim as complementing the 2 Sahih collections. In Heraclius's questioning of Abu Sufyan, as recorded in the Sahih, he asked, "What is his status among you?" Abu Sufyan replied, "He is of noble lineage among us." Heraclius responded, "Messengers are sent from among the noble lineage of their people," meaning they possess a tribe and strength to shield them from the harm of disbelievers, enabling them to convey their sustainer's message and fulfill God's intent in perfecting his religion and way. Among their signs, too, are the extraordinary miracles that occur through them, testifying to their truthfulness. These are acts beyond human capacity, termed miracles for their incapacitating nature, occurring outside the realm of human ability. People differ on the manner of their occurrence and their role in affirming the prophets. The theologians, adhering to the doctrine of the choosing agent, assert that miracles occur by God's power, not the prophet's action. Even among the Mu'tazila, who hold that human acts emanate from themselves, miracles are not of the same genus as human actions. For most theologians, the prophet's role in miracles is limited to challenging by God's permission, meaning he cites them as proof of his truthfulness before their occurrence. When they manifest, they stand as explicit testimony from God of his veracity, their evidential value being definitive. Thus, a miracle's proof lies in the combination of the extraordinary act and the challenge, the latter being an integral part of it, distinguishing it from saintly marvels, karamat and sorcery, as these do not necessitate affirmation and thus lack the element of challenge, except coincidentally. If a challenge occurs in the context of a saintly marvel, as some permit, its indication pertains to sainthood, not prophethood. Hence, scholars like Abu Ishaq and others have denied the occurrence of marvels as karamat to avoid confusion with prophethood through a challenge for sainthood. We have shown the distinction between the two, as the challenge of a saint differs from that of a prophet, eliminating ambiguity. However, the transmission regarding Abu Ishaq's stance is not explicit and may be interpreted as a denial of prophetic miracles occurring for saints based on the specificity of each group's marvels. As for the Mu'tazila, they deny the occurrence of karamat because marvels are not human acts, which are habitual, thus seeing no distinction. The occurrence of marvels through a liar as deception is deemed impossible. For the Ash'arites, this is because the essence of a miracle is affirmation and guidance. If it occurred otherwise, evidence would become doubt, guidance would turn to misguidance, and affirmation to falsehood, rendering truths absurd and negating the essence of attributes an impossibility. For the Mu'tazila, it is because turning evidence into doubt and guidance into misguidance is repugnant, hence impossible from God. As for the philosophers, they view the extraordinary as the prophet's act, even if beyond human capacity, based on their doctrine of intrinsic necessity and the interdependence of events through causes and conditions, ultimately reliant on the necessary being acting by essence, not choice. They hold that the prophetic soul possesses inherent qualities, including the ability to perform marvels by its power and command over the elements in creation. The prophet, in their view, is innately disposed to influence the cosmos whenever directed toward it, equipped by God for such. For them, a marvel occurs for the prophet whether as a challenge or not, evidencing his truthfulness through his cosmic influence, a unique trait of the prophetic soul, rather than as explicit divine affirmation. Thus, its evidential value is not definitive as with the theologians, nor is the challenge integral to the miracle, failing to distinctly separate it from sorcery or karamat. They distinguish it from sorcery by asserting that the prophet is inclined to good deeds, averse to evil, so his marvels bear no harm, unlike the sorcerer whose acts are entirely malevolent. They differentiate it from karamat by the specificity of prophetic marvels, such as ascending to the heavens, penetrating dense bodies, reviving the dead, conversing with angels, and flying through the air, while saintly marvels are lesser, like multiplying the scarce or foretelling minor future events, falling short of prophetic cosmic influence. The Sufis have affirmed this in their writings and teachings from their informants. Having established this, know that the greatest, noblest and most evident of miracles is the glorious Quran revealed to our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Most marvels occur distinct from the revelation the Prophet receives, with the miracle serving as testimony to his truthfulness. Yet, the Quran is itself both the claimed revelation and the miraculous marvel, its evidence inherent within, requiring no external proof as other miracles do alongside revelation. Thus, it is the clearest in evidence, for the proof and the proven are united within it. This is the meaning of his saying, "There is no prophet among the prophets except that he was given signs by which people believed in him. What I have been given is a revelation inspired to me, and I hope to have the most followers on the day of resurrection." He indicates that when a miracle reaches this pinnacle of clarity and strength in evidence, being itself the revelation, its truthfulness is most manifest, thus multiplying the believers and followers for his nation. Let us now expound the essence of prophethood as elucidated by many scholars, followed by the nature of soothsaying, dreams, the state of diviners, and other means of perceiving the unseen. We say, may God guide us and you, that we behold this world and all its creations arranged in a profound order and precision, with causes linked to effects, realms connected to realms, and some existences transforming into others in a manner whose wonders never cease and whose purposes are boundless. Begin with the tangible, corporeal world, starting with the realm of elements, how they ascend from earth to water, then to air, and finally to fire, each interconnected, each poised to transform into the next, ascending or descending at times. The higher is subtler than what precedes it, until reaching the realm of the spheres, the subtlest of all, layered in a connection beyond sensory grasp, save for their motions, by which some deduce their measures and positions, and beyond that the existence of essences bearing these effects. Then contemplate the realm of generation, how it commences with minerals, progresses to plants, then to animals in a wondrous gradation. The highest horizon of minerals connects to the lowest of plants, such as grasses and seedless growths. The highest of plants, like palms and vines, links to the lowest of animals, such as snails and shellfish, possessing only the sense of touch. This connection among generated beings means the highest horizon of one is innately prepared to become the lowest of the next. The animal realm expands, diversifying its kinds, culminating in humankind, the possessor of thought and reflection, rising from the realm of instinct where sense and perception converge, yet not actualizing reflection and thought. This marks the initial horizon of humanity, the furthest our observation extends. We further discern varied effects across these realms. In the sensory realm, effects stem from the motions of spheres and elements. In the generative realm, from growth and perception. All testify to an influencing entity distinct from bodies, thus spiritual, connected to generated beings through the interconnectedness of this world in their existence. Hence, it is the perceiving and motivating soul. Above it must exist another being granting it the faculties of perception and motion connected to it, whose essence is pure perception and intellect, the realm of angels. Consequently, the soul must possess the potential to shed its humanity for angelhood, becoming actually of their kind at a moment in time, in a fleeting glance, after perfecting its spiritual essence, as we shall elaborate. It connects in two directions, downward to the body, acquiring sensory perceptions, preparing it for actual intellection, and upward to the angelic horizon, gaining scientific and unseen perceptions, for the realm of events exists in their intellects beyond time, per the precise order of existence we have outlined, with essences and faculties interconnected. This human soul, hidden from sight yet evident in bodily effects, renders the body and its parts, whether united or disparate, as instruments of the soul and its faculties. As for active faculties, there is grasping with the hand, walking with the feet, speaking with the tongue, and general motion with the body in interaction. As for perceptive faculties, though ordered and ascending to the highest intellectual faculty, termed the rational, the external sensory faculties, sight, hearing, and others, rise to internal ones. The first is the common sense, a faculty perceiving sensed objects, seen, heard, touched, and more, in a unified state, unlike external senses where sensed objects do not crowd simultaneously. The common sense conveys to the imagination a faculty representing the sensed object in the soul as it is, stripped of external matter, with their instruments in the brain's frontal ventricle, front for the former, rear for the latter. The imagination ascends to the estimative and retentive faculties. The estimative perceives meanings tied to specifics, like Zaid's enmity or Ammar's friendship, a father's mercy or a wolf's predation. The retentive stores all perceptions, imagined or otherwise, as a treasury for when needed, with their instruments in the brain's rear ventricle, front for the former, rear for the latter. All ascend to the faculty of thought, its instrument in the brain's middle ventricle, the faculty initiating reflection and striving toward intellection, perpetually moving the soul toward liberation from human potential and readiness, actualizing intellection in emulation of the higher spiritual realm. It attains initial spiritual ranks in perception without bodily instruments, ever moving and oriented toward that. It may wholly shed humanity, both corporeality and spirituality, for angelhood at the higher horizon, not by acquisition but by the innate disposition and primordial nature God instilled. Human souls are of three kinds. First, a kind naturally incapable of attainment, halted in motion toward lower sensory and imaginative perceptions, combining meanings from the retentive and estimative on confined laws and specific order, acquiring depictive and affirmative sciences of thought within the body, all imaginative, limited in scope, ending at primary notions without surpassing them, even if what follows corrupts. This is the general scope of human bodily perception, where scholars' perceptions culminate and anchor. Second, a kind oriented by intellectual motion towards spiritual intellect and perception independent of bodily instruments, by the readiness God placed within, expanding its perceptive scope beyond the primaries of the first human perception, roaming the expanse of inner visions, all experiential, with a scope from origin but no end. These are the perceptions of scholar saints, possessors of religious sciences and divine insights, attained post-death by the blessed in the isthmus. Third, a kind innately disposed to shed humanity, corporeality and spirituality entirely for angelhood at the higher horizon, becoming actually angelic in a fleeting glance, witnessing the higher assembly in their realm and hearing psychic speech and divine address in that moment. These are the prophets, prayers and peace of God upon them, for whom God ordained this shedding of humanity in that revelatory moment as an innate disposition and moulded nature, purifying them from bodily impediments and hindrances while clad in humanity by the intent and rectitude instilled in their instincts, aligning them to that direction, and rooting in their natures a yearning for worship, unveiling and facilitating that path. They orient to that horizon through this shedding whenever they will, by that innate disposition, not acquisition or craft. Thus, they turn and shed their humanity, receiving in that higher assembly what they are to convey, descending it to human perceptions within their faculties for the wisdom of conveying to creation. At times, one hears a murmur, as if a cipher of speech, grasping the meaning conveyed, not ceasing until comprehended. At others, the angel appears as a man speaking, and he understands what is said. Receiving from the angel, returning to human perceptions, and comprehending what was conveyed occur as if in a single instant, swifter than an eye's blink, not in time but all at once, appearing rapid. Hence it is termed revelation, wahi, for in language wahi denotes swiftness. Know that the first state of the murmur is the rank of non-messenger prophets, as scholars have determined, while the second, of the angel appearing as a man addressing, is the rank of messenger prophets, thus more complete. This elucidates the hadith where the Prophet explained revelation when asked by Al-Harith ibn Hisham, "How does revelation come to you?" He replied, "Sometimes it comes like the ringing of a bell, the most intense upon me. When it ceases, I have grasped what was said. At other times, the angel appears to me as a man and speaks, and I understand what he says." The first is more intense as it marks the initial transition in that connection from potential to actuality, entailing some difficulty. Thus, returning to human perceptions in it is confined to hearing, with other senses strained. As revelation recurs and reception multiplies, that connection eases, so returning to human perceptions encompasses all, especially the clearest, visual perception. The expression of comprehension in the first uses the past tense, in the second the present, bearing a rhetorical subtlety. The speech mirrors the two states of revelation. The first state is likened to a murmur, not speech in common parlance, reporting comprehension following its cessation, fitting the past tense for completion and severance. The second likens the angel to a speaking man, with comprehension concurrent, fitting the present tense for renewal. Know, O seeker of truth, that the state of divine revelation in all its dimensions bears a profound burden and an intense severity to which the Qur'an itself has alluded with sublime clarity. The Exalted has declared, "Verily, we shall cast upon thee a weighty word." Qur'an 73:5. And Aisha, may God be pleased with her, recounted that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, endured immense hardship during the descent of revelation. She described how, even on the coldest of days when the revelation came upon him, beads of perspiration would stream from his noble brow as if in testimony to the ordeal. This state often enveloped him in a veil of absence from the world, accompanied by a sound akin to a deep murmur, a phenomenon well known and oft recorded. The cause of this lies in the very nature of revelation, as we have previously elucidated. It is a departure from the realm of human perception to the exalted sphere of angelic cognition, a receiving of divine speech by the soul which brings with it a tremendous strain. This strain arises from the soul's severance from its earthly self, a shedding of its familiar horizon to ascend to that other celestial horizon. Such is the essence of the covering he spoke of at the outset of revelation, when he implored, "Cover me," until the intensity overwhelmed him. Then he was released and commanded, "Read," to which he replied, "I am not one who reads." This exchange repeated a second and a third time, as narrated in the Hadith. Yet with gradual familiarity, this burden lightened somewhat over time, becoming less arduous compared to its initial weight. Thus, the verses and surahs of the Quran that descended in Mecca were often shorter than those revealed in Medina. Consider, for instance, the account of the revelation of Surah al-Tawbah during the expedition of Tabuk, where much of it, if not all, came down upon him while he journeyed on his camel. In contrast, in Mecca, only portions of shorter surahs from the Mufassal, the latter part of the Quran, would descend at one time, with the remainder following later. Likewise, among the last revelations in Medina was the verse concerning debt, which, despite its length, pales in comparison to the Meccan verses such as those of Surah Al-Rahman, Al-Dariyat, Al-Mudaththir, Al-Duha, and Al-Falaq, and their like. Reflect upon this as a distinguishing sign between the Meccan and Medinan surahs and verses, and may God guide us to the truth. This, then, is the essence of the matter of prophethood. As for the art of soothsaying, kahana, it too is among the peculiar faculties of the human soul. We have previously established that the human soul possesses an inherent readiness to transcend its earthly bounds and ascend to the spiritual realm above it. In the case of prophets, this manifests as a fleeting glimpse granted by their innate disposition, without recourse to acquired means, sensory perceptions, imaginative constructs, or bodily actions, neither speech nor movement nor any external aid. It is simply a shedding of the human condition for the angelic state, a transformation wrought by divine nature in a moment swifter than the blink of an eye. Since this readiness exists within human nature, reason permits a logical division. There exists another class of humanity, deficient in comparison to the first, as the incomplete stands in opposition to the complete. For the absence of external aid in perception is the antithesis of dependence upon it, and how vast is the chasm between the two. Thus, existence allows for another category of humans innately inclined to stir their rational faculties through deliberate thought and will, driven by an urge towards such perception. Yet, due to their inherent deficiency and inability to attain perfection, they cling to tangible or imagined particulars such as transparent objects, animal bones, rhymed speech, or the sudden appearance of a bird or beast. They persist in this sensory or imaginative engagement, using it as a crutch for the transcendence they seek, as if it were a guide accompanying them. This faculty within them, which initiates such perception, is what we call soothsaying. Because these souls are naturally inclined to imperfection and lack, their perceptions are more attuned to particulars than universals. Hence, their imaginative power is exceedingly strong, for it is the instrument of particulars, penetrating them with complete mastery, whether in sleep or wakefulness. This imagination stands ever ready, like a mirror in which they gaze incessantly. Yet the soothsayer cannot attain perfection in grasping abstract truths, for their inspiration stems from the whispers of the devil. At the highest level of this class, they may employ rhymed and balanced speech to distract themselves from sensory distractions, thereby strengthening, to some degree, their incomplete connection to the unseen. Through this movement, stirred by an external force, something is cast into their heart which they then utter. Sometimes it aligns with truth, and sometimes it is falsehood, for they compensate for their deficiency with an external element alien to their perceiving essence, incompatible with it. Thus both truth and falsehood mingle in their perception, rendering it unreliable. Often they resort to conjecture and guesswork, driven by a desire to attain perception, or to deceive those who seek their counsel. Those distinguished by the title of soothsayers, kahana, are the most elevated among their kind, for they are associated with rhymed speech, as the prophet, peace be upon him, remarked of such expressions. This is from the rhymed speech of the soothsayers, linking rhyme specifically to them by attribution. When questioning Ibn Sayyad to uncover his true state, the prophet asked, "How does this matter come to you?" He replied, "It comes to me as both true and false." The prophet responded, "The matter has been confused for you," meaning that prophethood is characterized by unerring truth, untouched by falsehood, for it is a direct connection of the prophet's essence to the highest realm without any intermediary or external aid. Soothsaying, however, due to the soothsayer's inherent weakness, relies on external imaginings, which infiltrate their perception and taint the insight they seek, mingling falsehood with it. Hence, it cannot be deemed prophethood. We assert that the highest rank of soothsaying is the state of rhymed speech, for its meaning is subtler than other forms of hidden knowledge derived from visible or audible phenomena. This subtlety indicates a closer proximity to connection and perception, and a lesser degree of incapacity. Some have claimed that soothsaying ceased since the advent of prophethood, due to the casting of meteors at the devils to prevent them from accessing heavenly tidings, as occurred on the eve of the Prophet's mission and as mentioned in the Quran. Since soothsayers supposedly glean their knowledge of the heavens from devils, their craft is said to have been nullified from that day. Yet there is no conclusive evidence for this, for the knowledge of soothsayers may stem from their own souls, as we have explained, as much as from devils. Moreover, the Quranic verse only indicates the prevention of devils from a specific type of heavenly news, namely that concerning the mission of the Prophet, and does not preclude other matters. Furthermore, this cessation may have been limited to the period immediately preceding prophethood, after which it likely returned to its former state. This seems evident, for such faculties dim in the era of prophethood, just as stars and lamps fade in the presence of the sun, since prophethood is the greatest light, before which all other lights vanish. Some philosophers have posited that soothsaying emerges only prior to prophethood and ceases thereafter, as is the case with every prophetic mission. They argue that the existence of prophethood necessitates a specific celestial configuration, and at the completion of that configuration, the prophethood it heralds is fully realized. An incomplete configuration, however, gives rise to a deficient nature of the same kind, which manifests as the soothsayer, as we have described. Thus, before the perfect configuration is attained, an imperfect one prevails, necessitating the existence of one or more soothsayers. Once the perfect configuration is achieved and the prophet appears in full splendor, and the pangs heralding such a nature subside, nothing of that kind remains. Yet this view rests on the assumption that a partial celestial configuration produces a partial effect, which is not necessarily conceded. It may be that the configuration only produces its effect in its purest form, and if any part of it is lacking, it produces nothing at all, rather than an incomplete effect, as they claim. Moreover, if soothsayers coexist with the era of prophethood, they recognize the truth of the prophet and the evidence of his miracles, for they possess a measure of intuitive insight into the nature of prophethood, akin to every human's awareness of the day. This intuitive connection is more pronounced in the soothsayer than in one who merely dreams. Yet what often prevents them from acknowledging this and leads them to denial is the overpowering lure of worldly ambitions, such as the hope that prophethood might be bestowed upon them. Thus they fall into obstinacy, as was the case with Umayyah ibn Abi al-Salt, who coveted prophethood, and similarly with Ibn Sayyad, Musaylimah, and others. However, when faith prevails and such vain aspirations are severed, they embrace belief with the finest sincerity, as occurred with Tulayha al-Asadi and Suwad ibn Karib, whose contributions to the Islamic conquests bore witness to the beauty of their faith. As for dreams, ruya, their reality lies in the soul's fleeting glimpse into its own spiritual essence, perceiving a trace of the images of future events. When the soul attains a state of spirituality, the forms of events become manifest within it as actual realities, as is the nature of all spiritual entities. It achieves this spirituality by divesting itself of bodily attachments and sensory perceptions. This may occur momentarily during sleep, as we shall elaborate, allowing it to acquire knowledge of future matters to which it aspires, and to return with this insight to its sensory faculties. If this acquisition is weak and unclear, it manifests in the imagination through allegory and symbolism, necessitating interpretation to unravel its meaning. However, if the acquisition is strong and unclouded by allegory, it requires no interpretation, for it is free of symbolic representation. The reason for this fleeting glimpse lies in the soul's inherent spirituality, perfected through its union with the body and its faculties, until it becomes pure intellect, fully realized in actuality. At that point it becomes a spiritual entity, perceiving without reliance on bodily instruments. Yet its rank among spiritual beings is below that of the angels of the highest realm, who have never been bound to bodily perceptions or otherwise. This readiness persists as long as the soul remains within the body. It manifests in a general form common to all humanity, which is the phenomenon of dreams, and in a specific form unique to the saints, awliya. For prophets, it is a readiness to transcend the human condition entirely, ascending to pure angelic spirituality, the loftiest of spiritual states. This readiness recurs in them during the states of revelation, resembling the condition of sleep in its effect upon bodily perceptions, though sleep is far inferior in intensity. Due to this resemblance, the lawgiver, the prophet, described a dream as 1 part of 46 parts of prophethood, or in another narration 43, and in yet another 70. The specific number is not the essence of the matter, rather it signifies the vast disparity in these ranks, as evidenced by the mention of 70 in some narrations, a number used by Arabs to denote abundance. Some have interpreted the narration of 46 as referring to the initial 6 months of the prophet's revelation through dreams, which is half a year, while the total duration of his prophethood in Mecca and Medina was 23 years, making half a year 1 part of 46. Yet, this interpretation is far from conclusive, for this duration pertains solely to the prophet, peace be upon him, and we have no evidence that it applies to other prophets. Moreover, it merely reflects a temporal ratio between dreams and prophethood, not the intrinsic nature of their relationship. Having clarified this, know that the meaning of this part refers to the ratio of the general readiness inherent in all humanity to the specific, proximate readiness unique to the prophets by their divine disposition, upon whom be God's blessings and peace. This general readiness, though widespread among humans, is often obstructed by numerous barriers to its actualization, chief among them being the external senses. Thus, God has ordained that the veil of the senses be lifted through sleep, a natural state inherent in humanity, allowing the soul, upon this lifting, to encounter what it yearns for in the realm of truth. At times it grasps a glimpse of its object, achieving its aim. Hence, the lawgiver declared dreams among the glad tidings, stating, "Nothing remains of prophethood except the glad tidings." When asked, "What are the glad tidings, O messenger of God?" he replied, "The righteous dream seen by a righteous person, or seen for him." The reason for the lifting of the sensory veil during sleep is as I shall describe. The rational soul's perceptions and actions are mediated by the animal spirit, a subtle vapour centred in the left ventricle of the heart, as detailed in the anatomical works of Galen and others. This spirit flows with the blood through the arteries and veins, imparting sensation, motion, and other bodily functions. Its subtlest essence rises to the brain, tempering its coolness and facilitating the functions of the faculties within its cavities. The rational soul perceives and intellects through this vaporous spirit, being bound to it by divine wisdom, for the subtle cannot influence the dense directly. Due to the subtlety of this animal spirit among bodily substances, it becomes a locus for the effects of the rational soul, which differs from it in its corporeality. The effects of the soul manifest in the body through this intermediary. We have previously mentioned that the soul's perception is of 2 kinds: external through the 5 senses and internal through the faculties of the brain. Both forms of perception distract it from apprehending what lies above it, its own spiritual essence, for which it is naturally prepared. Since the external senses are corporeal, they are prone to fatigue and exhaustion from the strain of perception, and the spirit becomes overwhelmed by excessive activity. Thus, God created within it a need for rest to restore perception to its fullest form. This occurs through the withdrawal of the animal spirit from the external senses and its return to the internal faculties. This process is aided by the coldness that envelops the body at night, prompting the innate heat to seek the body's depths, moving from the exterior to the interior. Consequently, the spirit, its vehicle, is drawn inward, which is why sleep predominantly occurs at night for humans. When the spirit withdraws from the external senses and returns to the internal faculties, the soul is relieved of sensory distractions and barriers. It then turns to the images stored in the retentive faculty, forming from them, through synthesis and analysis, imaginative representations often derived from recently encountered perceptions. The common sense, which integrates the external senses, perceives these images as if through the 5 senses. At times the soul may turn momentarily to its spiritual essence, despite the pull of the internal faculties, and perceive through its spiritual capacity, for it is innately disposed to this. It may then acquire images of things that have become connected to its essence at that moment. The imagination takes these perceived images and represents them either as they are or through allegory within familiar frameworks. Those represented through allegory require interpretation, while the soul's engagement in synthesis and analysis within the retentive faculty before attaining that glimpse results in what are called confused dreams, adgath alam. In the authentic narrations, the prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Dreams are of three kinds, a dream from God, a dream from an angel, and a dream from the devil." This classification aligns with what we have described. The clear dream is from God, the allegorical dream requiring interpretation is from an angel, and confused dreams are from the devil, for they are entirely false, and the devil is the source of falsehood. This is the reality of dreams, their causes, and the conditions that facilitate them through sleep. They are inherent faculties of the human soul, present universally among humanity, from which none are exempt. Indeed, every individual has, in sleep, seen things that later transpired in wakefulness on numerous occasions, confirming beyond doubt that the soul perceives the unseen during sleep. If this is possible in the realm of sleep, it is not precluded in other states, for the perceiving essence is one, and its faculties are universal across all conditions. May God, through his grace and bounty, guide us to the truth. VIII. Section. The occurrence of such perceptions among humans is generally without intention or control. The soul, in its yearning for a particular matter, may encounter it through that fleeting glimpse in sleep, for it directs itself toward it and thus perceives it. It is recorded in the book Al-Ghaya and other works of the practitioners of esoteric sciences that certain names, when recited before sleep, induce dreams concerning matters one seeks to know. These are termed halumiyah. Among them, Muslima mentions in Al-Ghaya a practice called halumat al-tiba al-tam, which involves reciting, after purifying one's intention and calming the mind before sleep, certain foreign words, tamagis, Badan Yaswad, Wagadas, Nufana, Gadis, and stating one's need. It is said that the individual will see a revelation concerning what they inquire about during sleep. A story is narrated of a man who, after several nights of dietary discipline and recitation, performed this ritual. A figure appeared to him, declaring, "I am your perfect nature," and answered his queries regarding matters he sought to understand. I myself have experienced remarkable visions through these names, gaining insight into personal matters I long to comprehend. Yet this does not prove that intending a dream causes it to occur. Rather, these halumat merely cultivate a readiness in the soul for the dream to manifest. When this readiness is strong, it facilitates the occurrence of what is prepared for, though one may undertake preparations as they wish, without this being evidence of causing the intended outcome. The ability to prepare is distinct from the ability to bring about the result. Reflect upon this and contemplate its parallels, for God is the all-wise, the all-knowing. VIII. Section. We find within the human species individuals who foretell events before their occurrence through an innate disposition that distinguishes their kind from others. They do not rely on any craft or deduce their knowledge from the stars or other signs. Rather, their perceptions arise from the natural disposition with which they were created. Such are the diviners, arafun, those who gaze into transparent objects like mirrors and basins of water, those who inspect the hearts, livers and bones of animals, those who practice augury with birds and beasts, and those who cast lots with pebbles, grains of wheat, or date stones. All these exist within the human realm, undeniable and indisputable. Likewise, the insane may utter words of the unseen, revealing hidden matters. So too do the sleeping and the recently deceased, who may speak of the unseen at the moment of death or sleep. Similarly, the practitioners of spiritual exercises among the Sufis possess well-known perceptions of the unseen through divine graces, karamat. We shall now discuss these various forms of perception, beginning with soothsaying and proceeding through each in turn, prefacing this with an introduction on how the human soul prepares itself to perceive the unseen across all these categories. The human soul is a spiritual entity, existing in potentiality and actualized through the body and its states. This is a truth evident to all. Everything in potentiality possesses a material substrate and a form. The form of this soul, through which its existence is completed, is none other than perception and intellection. It exists initially in potentiality, prepared for perception and the reception of both universal and particular forms. Its development and actualization are completed through association with the body, the influx of sensory perceptions, and the abstraction of universal meanings from these perceptions. Thus, it intellects forms successively until perception and intellection are actualized within it, completing its essence. The soul remains akin to prime matter, hayula, with forms impressing upon it through perception one after another. Hence, we observe that a child in the early stages of development lacks the capacity for perception inherent to its essence, whether in sleep, revelation, or otherwise, for its form. Its essence of perception and intellection has not yet been completed, nor has it abstracted universals. Once its essence is actualized, as long as it remains with the body, it possesses two types of perception. One, mediated by bodily instruments, conveyed through sensory faculties, and another through its own essence, without intermediaries. However, it is veiled from this latter perception by its immersion in the body, the senses, and their distractions, for the senses perpetually draw it outward, as it was initially disposed to sensory perception. At times it may turn from the external to the internal, lifting the veil of the body momentarily, either through a universal human trait, such as sleep, a specific trait unique to some, such as soothsaying or divination practices, or through spiritual discipline, as practiced by the Sufis in their unveilings, kashf. At such moments, it turns toward the spiritual entities above it in the higher realm, due to the existential connection between its horizon and theirs, as we have previously explained. These entities are purely spiritual, embodying perception and intellect in actuality, containing within them the forms and realities of all existence, as we have noted. Thus, some of these forms manifest to the soul, and it acquires knowledge from them. Sometimes these perceived forms are conveyed to the imagination, which shapes them into familiar moulds, then returns them to the senses, either in their pure form or within those moulds, and the soul speaks of what it has perceived. This is the exposition of the soul's readiness for perceiving the unseen. Let us now return to what we promised to elucidate regarding its various forms. As for those who gaze into transparent objects such as mirrors, basins of water, animal hearts, livers and bones, and those who cast lots with pebbles and date stones, they belong to the category of soothsayers, though they are of a lower rank in their innate disposition. For the soothsayer requires little effort to lift the veil of the senses, whereas these individuals struggle with it by confining all sensory perceptions to a single type, the noblest of which is sight. They focus intently on a simple visible object until their perception manifests, and they speak of what they discern. Some may assume that what they behold is on the surface of the mirror, but this is not so. Rather, they continue gazing at the mirror's surface until their vision fades, and a veil, like a cloud, appears between them and the surface. Within this veil, forms representing their perceptions take shape, to which they point. Their aim is to ascertain what they seek to know, whether by affirmation or negation, and they report accordingly as they have perceived it. The mirror and the forms perceived therein are not apprehended in that state. Rather, they give rise to another type of perception, which is psychic, not visual. This psychic perception takes shape for the senses, as is well understood. Similar is the case with those who gaze into animal hearts and livers, or into water and basins and the like. We have witnessed some among them who engage the senses merely with incense, then incantations, to prepare themselves, after which they report what they perceive, claiming to see forms personified in the air, narrating through symbols and gestures the matters they seek to understand. Their absence from sensory awareness is less profound than that of the former group. Truly, the world is replete with wonders. As for augury, Zaja, It is the phenomenon whereby some individuals speak of the unseen upon the sudden appearance of a bird or animal, reflecting on it after its disappearance. This is a faculty within the soul that stirs eagerness and thought concerning what was augured through something seen or heard. Their imaginative power, as we have mentioned, is strong, prompting them to investigate, aided by what they have seen or heard, leading them to perceive as the imaginative faculty does during sleep when the senses are still. It mediates between the sensory perception experienced in wakefulness and what the intellect has grasped, resulting in a vision. As for the insane, their rational souls are weakly attached to the body, often due to an imbalance in their temperament or a deficiency in the animal spirit. Thus, their soul is not fully immersed in the senses, nor engrossed in them due to the pain of deficiency and illness that preoccupies it. At times, another spiritual entity of a devilish nature may vie for attachment to the body, weakening the soul's resistance, resulting in confusion. When this confusion afflicts them, whether due to a corruption in their temperament or interference from devilish souls, they become entirely absent from sensory awareness, perceiving a glimpse of their soul's realm. Some forms imprint upon it which the imagination shapes, and they may speak without intending to or being aware of it. The perceptions of all such individuals are a mixture of truth and falsehood, for they cannot achieve connection even when sensory awareness is lost, without relying on external imaginings, as we have explained. From this arises the falsehood in their perceptions. As for diviners, Araufun, they are those who pursue such perceptions without attaining true connection. They focus their thought on the matter they seek, resorting to conjecture and guesswork based on what they imagine to be the foundations of connection and perception, claiming thereby to know the unseen, though in reality they possess no such knowledge. This is the summation of these matters. Al-Masudi discussed them in Muruj al-Dahab, yet his treatment lacks precision and accuracy. It appears from his discourse that he was far from mastery in these sciences, merely relaying what he heard from his people and others. These perceptions we have described are all present within humanity. The Arabs, for instance, would turn to soothsayers to learn of future events and settle disputes, seeking from their unseen knowledge the truth of their affairs. Much of this is recorded in literary works. Among the renowned soothsayers of the pre-Islamic era were Sheikh ibn Anmar ibn Nizar and Sati ibn Mazin ibn Ghassan, the latter of whom moved as if folded like cloth, having no bones except his skull. Among their famous accounts are their interpretations of the dream of Rabi'a ibn Mudar, foretelling the rule of Abyssinia over Yemen, followed by the rule of Mudar and the emergence of the Muhammadan prophethood among Quraysh. Likewise, Sati interpreted the dream of the Mobedan sent to him by Khosrow via Abd al-Masih, foretelling the advent of prophethood and the fall of the Persian Empire. These accounts are well known. Similarly, diviners were numerous among the Arabs, mentioned in their poetry. One poet said, "I said to the diviner of Yamamah, 'Heal me, for if you heal me, you are indeed a physician.' Another said, 'I made the diviner of Yamamah and the diviner of Najd my arbiters, hoping they might cure me. They said, "May God heal you, for by God we have no hand in what your ribs conceal." The diviner of Yamamah was Riba ibn Ujla, and the diviner of Najd was Al-Ablaq al-Asadi. Among these unseen perceptions are those that occur to some individuals at the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, speaking of matters they yearn to know, revealing the unseen as they desire. This happens only at the onset of sleep, as wakefulness fades and control over speech diminishes, and they speak as if naturally compelled to do so. The utmost outcome is that they hear and comprehend it. Similarly, such speech may issue from the slain at the moment their heads or bodies are severed. It has reached us that some tyrannical rulers killed prisoners in their dungeons to discern from their words at the moment of death the outcomes of their own affairs, and they were informed of what they sought. Muslima in Al-Ghaya mentions a practice akin to this stating that if a human is placed in a vat filled with sesame oil and remains there for 40 days, nourished only on figs and walnuts until their flesh wastes away, leaving only veins and the features of the head, and is then removed from the oil upon exposure to the air, they will answer any question posed about future events, whether personal or general. This is among the abhorrent practices of sorcerers, yet it illustrates the marvels of the human realm. Some seek to attain such unseen perceptions through spiritual exercises, striving for an artificial death by suppressing all bodily faculties, erasing their traces from the soul and nourishing it with remembrance, dhikr, to strengthen its renewed essence. This is achieved through focused thought and prolonged hunger. It is undeniably evident that when death befalls the body, the senses and their veils vanish, and the soul gains insight into the unseen. Among these are practitioners of magical exercises who discipline themselves to attain knowledge of the unseen and influence the realms. Most of these are found in regions far to the south or north, particularly in India, where they are called hukiya. They possess numerous texts on such practices, and the accounts about them are extraordinary. As for the Sufis, their discipline is religious and free from these blameworthy aims. Their intent is to gather their resolve and turn wholly to God, seeking the spiritual tastes of gnosis and unity. They add to their discipline of focus and hunger the nourishment of remembrance, through which their orientation in this practice is perfected. For when the soul is nurtured on remembrance, it draws nearer to divine gnosis, whereas without remembrance it becomes devilish. Any knowledge of the unseen or influence that they attain is incidental and not their primary aim. If such outcomes are sought from the outset, the intention becomes directed to something other than God, aiming instead at influence and insight into the unseen. A losing bargain, for it is in truth a form of polytheism. As one of them said, "Whoever seeks gnosis for the sake of gnosis has affirmed a second." They direct their intent solely to the worshipped one, not for any other. If something occurs along the way, it is incidental and unintended, and many of them flee from it when it appears, paying it no heed, desiring God for his own sake, not for anything else. Their attainment of such states is well known, and what they perceive of the unseen or intuit through thoughts is termed insight, firasa, or unveiling, kashf, while their influence is called a divine grace, karama. None of this is deemed strange in their regard. However, some, like Abu Ishaq al-Isfarayini and Abu Muhammad ibn Abi Zayd al-Maliki, among others, have denied it, fearing confusion between miracles, mujizat, and other phenomena. Yet the theologians rely on the criterion of challenge, tahaddi, to distinguish them, which suffices. It is established in the authentic narrations that the messenger of God, peace be upon him, said, "Among you are those who are inspired, muhadathun, and among them is Umar." Numerous well-known incidents among the companions testify to this, such as Umar's exclamation, "May God be pleased with him, O Sariya, the mountain!" Sariya ibn Zunaym was a commander of a Muslim army in Iraq during the conquests, caught in a perilous battle where retreat was imminent. Near him was a mountain to which he could retreat, and this was conveyed to Umar while he was delivering a sermon on the pulpit in Medina. He called out, "O Sariya, the mountain!" and Sariya heard him from his distant location and saw his form there. The story is well known. A similar incident occurred with Abu Bakr, may God be pleased with him, in his bequest to his daughter Aisha, concerning a gift of date palm clusters from his garden, instructing her to harvest them to exclude them from the inheritance. He said, "They are your two brothers and your sisters?" She replied, "There is only Asma. Who is the other?" He said, "The one in the womb of Bint Kharija. I see her as a girl." And indeed it was a girl, as recorded in Al-Muwatta, under the chapter on what is not permissible in gifts. Such incidents are abundant among them, and those who followed among the righteous and exemplars. However, the Sufis say that such states diminish during the era of prophethood, for no state remains for the seeker in the presence of the prophet. They even say that when a seeker enters the prophetic city, Medina, their state is stripped away until they depart. May God grant us guidance and lead us to the truth. Among these seekers among the Sufis are a group of ecstatics, Bahalil, seemingly deranged, more akin to the insane than the rational. Yet they have attained the stations of sainthood and the states of the truthful. Those with spiritual taste who understand them recognize this from their conditions despite their lack of legal accountability. They manifest astonishing reports of the unseen, for they are unbound by constraints and speak freely, bringing forth marvels. Some jurists deny that they hold any spiritual stations, observing the legal accountability has been lifted from them, and sainthood is only attained through worship. This is an error, for God's favour is bestowed upon whom he wills, and the attainment of sainthood does not depend on worship or anything else. Since the human soul exists as a reality, God may distinguish it with whatever gifts he chooses. These individuals have not lost their rational souls, nor have they become corrupted like the truly insane. Rather, they lack the rational faculty tied to legal accountability, which is a specific attribute of the soul, comprising necessary knowledge through which one discerns the affairs of livelihood and the order of life. If one discerns these, they have no excuse to reject legal obligations for the sake of their afterlife. Yet, one who lacks this attribute is not devoid of their soul, nor ignorant of their reality. They exist in their essence while lacking the rational faculty of accountability tied to livelihood. There is no impossibility in this, nor does God's selection of his servants for gnosis depend on any obligation. If this is established, know that their state may be confused with that of the truly insane, whose rational souls are corrupted, rendering them akin to beasts. You may distinguish them by certain signs. These ecstatics lack any specific orientation. They are born with this simplicity from the outset of their development, whereas insanity afflicts others later in life due to physical causes. When this occurs, and their rational souls are corrupted, they are lost. Another sign is their frequent interaction with people for good or ill, for they are not bound by permission due to the absence of accountability, whereas the insane lack such agency. This is the conclusion of our discourse, and may God guide us to the truth. Some may claim that there are perceptions of the unseen without absence from sensory awareness, such as the astrologers who speak of indications from the stars and their configurations in the celestial sphere, their effects on the elements and the resulting mixtures of their natures through conjunctions which influence the air. These astrologers are not connected to the unseen in any way. Their claims are mere conjectures and guesses based on supposed stellar influences and the resulting atmospheric mixtures augmented by intuitive speculation to detail individual matters in the world, as Ptolemy stated. We shall, God willing, demonstrate the fallacy of this in its proper place. Even if it were proven, it would amount to no more than conjecture and guesswork, bearing no relation to what we have discussed.